NerdcoreMovement.com, #1 MMA sportsbook in the world. They offer the best UFC odds, live betting, and covers all big MMA promotions with huge prop markets and odds. OwnBet also runs an exclusive MMA pick'em for UFC events. Parlay each event and win up to $2,500 in cash. Entry fee is only $1 for each bet slip. Use promo code Fight Society and get the best MMA bonus out there, 200% bonus. Sign up today at OwnBet.com. That's OwnBet, OHMBET.com. Welcome back to the Fight Society podcast. I am Damon Martin, and today I want to welcome in a very special co-host, as my other co-host, Jeremy Loper, is getting ready to travel to Virginia for Matt Brown's final fight, retirement fight. Of course, our always co-host, Matt Brown, who is in his last fight this weekend in Virginia, taking on Diego Sanchez. So in his place, what is just a sensational person to replace him for the day. Full Combat Zone, writer, author, all-around great guy, Duane Finley.
Hey, yo.
Author. I had to throw an author because the book just came out. The book just dropped.
Yeah, man. That's a strange label. I'll take it though. You know, it's a pop-up book. Lots of pictures. Lots of illustrations. No, man. It's great. You know what? Anytime we can get the Voltron, the original Voltron, back together to form to dominate MMA, let's do this.
I feel like we're going to have an entirely new book once we go to Detroit for UFC 218 together.
Well, you do know, in full disclosure, that you know, it's a 3-book deal. So the first book covers 14 to 15. The second one's going to cover 15 to 16. And third one will cover 16 through the end of 17. So our road trip to Detroit will actually cap it all off. So, you know, hey, man, hey. And you've known me for a long time. So you know that there's no middle ground with me. It's either the most amazing stuff happens or the worst stuff you can imagine. Like, either like, oh my gosh, man, that's awesome. Or are you okay? You know, like, there's no like,
There's no middle ground when we go on the road together. It's it's either epic or we have a story to tell when it's all said and done either way.
Oh yeah, man. And you know, and that's the thing, right? Is you know, our road trippings, you know, our road trips preceded the road trip project, you know, for me, and you know, kind of cut my teeth. You know, the MMA fans listening, they'll never know the beauty of the Lost Czech Congo interview, or the Lost Christian Moorcraft. Those are like Bob Dylan bootlegs, you know, playing with the band in Levon Helm and those guys. Like, that's how sacred they are in the MMA space.
Yeah.
Where do we lose it? I lost it in your car.
Yeah, so the first time we met, actually in person, was for the UFC card in Pittsburgh, which ended up being headlined by Pat Barry and Chet Congo. And so we're hanging out, and I'm giving you a ride back, I think, to your hotel or something like that, or we went to a media event together, whatever, and I was giving you a ride back to your car or something. And somehow your voice recorder fell out into my car, and we searched for that thing for like an hour, could not find it. Like, at that point, we were like, maybe you left it somewhere, maybe you dropped it somewhere outside the arena, whatever. Thought it was gone forever. And you didn't find that particular recorder again until, what, like a year later when you got back in my car, and somehow you dug in there again and it was there?
Yeah, I think we had circled back, and we were going to Toronto or one of the infamous New Jersey trips. And something, I was like, man, you know how, like, you know when you lose your keys, how you check your pockets 30 times even though you know they're not there?
Exactly.
I was like, you know what, I'm just going to reach in there, and, you know, I've already checked it thoroughly, and then I was like, look, we got it. Yeah. And funny enough, that's the one I still have to this day.
That's hilarious. Yeah, the lost Czech Congo interview in front of probably his best performance of his entire career when he knocked out Pat Barry after one of the craziest comebacks in the history of the sport, too.
Yeah, but by the time I found it, it wasn't that anymore. You know, it was Roy Nelson.
And the Christian Warcraft was another classic one on there. So
yeah, he was gone. Like, he'd already been cut. Like, you can't. You know, that's the thing is I was still kind of green in the game at that time, and I was like, man, I had just kind of worked the media day. I got some good stuff, and I was all excited about it. And then I got to go back because that's what I was with Heavy, and then I got to go back to my editor and be like, man, I ain't got shit. You know, like. Damon is lost in Pittsburgh.
Oh man, what a moment! What a moment! Well, we got lots to talk about today. We're gonna have a great show. We're gonna talk to TJ Dillashaw's head coach Duane Ludwig, coming off a big win for him at UFC 217. We're also gonna talk to two of the fighters coming up from this weekend's UFC Fight Night card in Virginia. Dustin Poirier, of course, who fights in the main event against Anthony Pettis, and we're also gonna talk to UFC veteran and one of the all-time bonus leaders, Joe Lauzon. And Joe's just one of those guys, you know Joe very well as well, Duane. He's one of those guys you can talk to him about anything, and it becomes an interesting conversation.
Oh yeah, man! And the great thing about Lauzon, what makes him such a magical character in this fight game, is that he's just so well versed outside of the fight game. He's been doing it so long. Yeah, does he want to relive all those wars? I'm sure fans talk to him about that all the time. But if you get him talking about anything else, man, like movies or comics or our mutual love for comic movies, then he'll go for days.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get to any of that, and we'll get to Duane Ludwig first because that's going to be part of the subject we talk about, but UFC 217, of course, went down over the weekend. What an incredible card. I mean, from start to finish, it was insane. From the prelims, which were really good, we had that crazy spinning back elbow from Ricardo Ramos, all the way up to the prelims where you saw James Vick get a huge win over Joe Duffy. Of course, the main card kicked off. You had, Paulo Costa or Borrachina, however you want to say, murked Johnny Hendricks, kind of what we all expected. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson goes out there and puts on a masterful performance, just picking apart Jorge Masvidal, which a lot of people didn't see coming. And then we had the three title fights. And at the beginning of the card, I remember somebody tweeting out, how many titles do you think will change hands at UFC 217? And I said, like a jackass, none of them. I thought all the fighters would hold on to their titles. Well, guess what? I was wrong on every single account.
Oh, man. I tell you what, the only one that I was dead right about was St. Pierre. I had hoped against hope that we would get some version of it back. I figured he'd win. He'd find a way to win. I didn't figure it would be like that. But everything else, man, I was way off on. I thought Joanna, and I love Rose to death, but I thought just, Joanna looked so unstoppable. And Rose just kind of, you had this, you couldn't tell whether she was either like, I'm going to kill you or shook or whatever. I mean, I think it's great that gives us another look into the psyche of it. But then Dillashaw, Garbrandt, that's to toss them up. They both come out slinging. You knew it was going to happen. But yeah, man, a great card overall. And you know what? And I know you're good friends with Bisping too. You've done some great stuff with Michael. But man, what a guy! I know people you either love him or hate him. But he's got he makes you watch him fight. But man, he left it all out there, and hats off to that guy. He's got one of those true resumes, like a Dan Henderson resume, where he's been in there with the best of the best, hasn't always won, but at the end of the day, he was a champion in a very popular and crowded division, and he can look at his career if he walks away in the next fight or two and be like, I did the damn thing, and I think that's all you can really hope for. Have some money in your pocket, have your senses about you, and to look back and say it was worth something.
Yeah, I think the thing about Bisping that I will say about that performance, because he was winning in that second round, he won the second round on all the scorecards, came back after not necessarily a bad first round, just not necessarily his best first round, and then he comes out and wins the second round, looks really good. He had GSP cut up from those elbows on the bottom, all the things he was doing right. And then obviously he got caught and he got finished. But I tell you this, the one thing I think, even if you're not a Bisping fan, the one thing that you can admit is that when Michael Bisping is finally done with this sport, maybe it's one more fight, maybe he goes over and fights in London, and that's his last fight. But when Michael Bisping is done and gone, and obviously he's never going to completely disappear, he's got his podcast, he does stuff on Fox, all that stuff, but I'm saying from his fighting career, when that's done, we're all going to miss him. Because think about all of the epic, rivalries he's been involved with Luke Rockhold, and of course, Dan Henderson, and then, doing the Ultimate Fighter with Jason Mayhem Miller, doing the Ultimate Fighter with Dan Henderson, just the war of words with Yoel Romero, and some of the other things he's done. I mean, this guy has, he has an innate ability to draw you into his fights, and we're going to miss a guy like that when he's gone. You can hate him, you can absolutely despise the guy, but you're going to miss having, because even if you despise the guy, you love watching him lose. You want to see this guy get beat, and there's an element of that you're going to miss when this guy finally does call it a career.
Yeah, and that's something I think a lot of fighters miss, when they look at the trash talk game, they you see guys like, I can't trash talk. Well, it's like, well, you didn't really fully embrace it. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be prepared to the end of the day, if they watch, you won. You know what I mean? And I don't think a lot of guys like the negative aspect of it, because nobody likes to be disliked. It takes a certain type of person to be able to handle being disliked. And I think Bisping was one of the first guys to really embrace that. Chael came to embrace it, and they're pretty close, similar timelines to kind of when they both But look at Rashad Evans. It really, like, Rashad could have done the same thing, but it bothered Rashad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing about a guy like Bisping's career. Everyone wants to discredit the guy and say he was the worst middleweight champion and he wasn't even the best middleweight, even though he had the belt and all those kind of things. But here's the fact: Michael Bisping at 38 was able to win the title from Luke Rockhold. Call it a fluke, call it whatever. He threw the punch. He meant to land the punch and knocked out Luke Rockhold. End of the day, he beat the number one guy and he became champion. But think about that in the context of his career at 38 versus most guys in the sport who've been around as long as Bisping, and we're talking about 20, 25, 30 fights into your career, who still have that level of success. Because I guarantee you, it's pretty thin. It's a very thin list of guys, or girls for that matter, who are still that competitive at 37, 38 years old after that kind of a career. Now, you can look at a Daniel Cormier and say, well, he's champion of the world, but he also didn't start fighting until he was 30. He wasn't a guy who was fighting at 22, 23. Bisping came into the game very young. And, I mean, he's been in the UFC for, 11, 12 years now? I mean, that's crazy. He grew up, really, from the Ultimate Fighter and all those different things. So, when you've got that, I mean, think about all the guys we've heard about kind of burned out and just, or took too much damage or whatever. At that 36, 37-year-old cutoff, when you've been fighting for 13 years, 12, 13 years, most guys aren't competitive at that age. That's why we have to marvel in a guy like Dan Henderson who can fight into his 40s, or a Randy Couture who did it into his 40s, or even a Michael Bisping at 38 to go out there and win a title when everyone had written him off. He went out there on 10 days' notice or whatever it was and knocked out Luke Rockhold. You don't have to like the guy, but you can't discredit what he's done.
No, you can't. And that's what the thing is. I thought that you did a great. You did a great feature on Bisping in the lead up to 217 that stripped away all the trash talk and all the hype and really focused on the resume. If he were to beat GSP, then it's hard. He's got an argument as the greatest of all time. I mean, you think about it. Win over Henderson, win over Silva, win over GSP. Man, who else can say they did that? But just granted, it didn't go his way, but just the fact that he got in there and rock and rolled with them, and he did it in a way that was highly entertaining, and it was balls out, and it was aggressive the way he always fought. I mean, hats off to the guy. I think we're gonna look back, and I agree with you. We're definitely gonna miss him when he's gone.
Yeah. So what about for GSP? I mean, maybe not his strongest performance to date. He did look a little slower. Obviously, it looked like the conditioning was catching up to him a little bit. But 4 years away, I mean, there's a certain level of, grace that you have to give this guy, grace period. I mean, the guy jumped back in and fought the middleweight champion in a 5-round fight in his first fight back in 4 years. He didn't even get a Takeo Mizugaki like Dominic Cruz did. He got, and I don't mean there's a knock on Takeo Mizugaki. I'm just saying, it's not a title fight. And, and then he got injured again, of course, and, there's some credit to be paid when he came back and beat TJ Dillashaw the way he did. But, for 4 years off, and also let's not forget, he went through another ACL surgery during that time. He was out basically for another year of his career with the ACL. Coming back and beating Bisping, maybe not his best night at the office, but really, then again, how is it not? He knocked a guy down and choked him out in the third round. We criticized this guy nonstop during his reign as welterweight champion that he didn't finish people. Well, he just went out and finished Michael Bisping. And I had the argument on Saturday night, and Duane, we can debate about this now if you want, but I said in my mind what Georges St-Pierre did by wrapping up that second title, choking out Michael Bisping the way he did, coming back after 4 years. In my mind, Georges St-Pierre is the greatest fighter of all time. Now, this debate can change because guys like this are still active. George ends up losing 3 in a row, maybe like a Fedor did. Maybe we change our narrative a little bit. But as of today, 2017, November 2017, I think Georges St-Pierre's resume is beyond reproach. He did it the right way. He didn't cheat, and I know people are going to throw the steroid accusations, but the fact is he never got busted for anything, and he's one of the guys who kind of led the charge to get more testing. Usually guys who do that aren't the ones, usually putting the needle in their ass, but that's just my opinion. But he did it the right way. And you think about the resume. I mean, Hughes twice, Condit, Alves, when Alves was looking like a freaking monster. I mean, that guy was just looking like a beast when he fought GSP, and GSP dismantled him for 5 rounds. Nick Diaz, BJ Penn a couple of times. I mean, listen, I love Demetrious Johnson. I think he's an amazing fighter. But I think when you put resume against resume, George St. Pierre is the best. And I also got to put this out there. I disqualified John Jones and Anderson Silva because facts are facts. They did test positive for steroids. Now, maybe we'll find out something different with John Jones, but I have a high probability that they're not going to suddenly say he didn't test positive for steroids. So I eliminate them from that conversation. So in my opinion, George St. Pierre is the GOAT.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think it's a clear-cut case. And, and the only other person you can look at resume-wise has already been disqualified. I mean, if you look at, you look at George's run fighting the best of the best, he, for that, 8-year period, he literally just stepped up and fought the number one contender. Whoever earned the shot, he got. Didn't matter if it was a money fight or a stylistic fight or anything like that. He came out and fought who was next in line, and that's admirable. The only other guy you could really think that did that at a time was John Jones. But then, it goes to the aforementioned point. But, and look at Demetrious Johnson, and you look at, he's definitely in that conversation. But how many former champions or, legit, they're legit for 125, but they came down from 135. That's great. But, it's not DJ's fault that he's not fighting guys with any history. You know what I'm saying? Like the Dillashaw fight, if this happens, boom, that's massive. Think about how many big fights George St. Pierre had. The Hughes fights, BJ Penn fights. The Koscheck was a big fight when it happened. The Matt Serra fight. Think about that. And then, Diaz, Condit, Hendricks. It was crazy. So then to have a guy come back, and you know what? The thing I loved about watching St. Pierre fight last weekend was, yes, you could tell fatigue got him. Yes, ring rust was there. But, man, the things that make George St. Pierre amazing is his timing, right? And he timed those takedowns right. He got beat up from the bottom because he was just a bigger man he was trying to control. That jab, we got reminded how beautiful that is. So, I love it. I think it's a quandary, really, to what he does next. I mean, I think there's plenty of options. But, it's just good to have him back, man. And to come back in that way after 4 years, Madison Square Garden, man, it just kind of felt like 2011 for a second.
Yeah. Well, it's just, and like I said, the downside of when you have this argument about this whole greatest of all time thing is that to build one guy up, you seemingly have to tear another guy down. And I hate that. But the fact is, and this is what I said on Saturday night, I love Demetrious Johnson. I think he is a supremely talented guy, and talent-wise, in terms of what he puts together, and I said this before, he's kind of like the creative fighter on a video game, except you turn everything up to a 10. I mean, his wrestling's on point, his striking's on point, his grappling's on, everything he does is great. But, like I said, DJ is a victim of his own success because when you look at his record, you can look at George St. Pierre's 9 title defenses in a row, and I guess the one guy you could maybe point to and say isn't at the top of the sport would be Dan Hardy. But at that time, Dan Hardy was off a few big wins. It looked good at welterweight, it looked good in the UFC, and he didn't really kind of, exposed is the wrong word, but he didn't really have a downturn until after the GSP fight. Leading into that, everyone thought, man, here's this guy, power puncher and kind of a scrappy guy from England. If you want to put him as like the quote-unquote worst defense on the record, listen, that's where DJ runs into a lot of problems. I mean, Chris Carriasso, Ray Borg, and I like Ray Borg very much, but I don't think, he was on a 2-fight win streak in the division. Henry Cejudo had no business being in there with Demetrious Johnson when they fought. He was, 3 fights into his UFC career, was still so green, from his wrestling career. He'd only been fighting professionally for 3 years, and we're going to say that guy really belonged in the cage of Demetrious Johnson at that point. Demetrious' biggest and most legit wins are over guys like Joseph Benavidez and John Dodson because they are established guys, because we have a history, we have a record to look at them and say what they've done against other top competition. But so many of the other guys on his record, unfortunately, don't have that. Tim Elliott, who I like very much, but Tim Elliott won a reality show after being cut from the UFC and came back and fought Demetrious Johnson. GSP never fought that. John Jones never fought that. So like I said, it's not that I'm trying to degrade what Demetrious has done, because Demetrious is a victim of his own success. It's just, unfortunately, the resume, in my opinion, doesn't stack up.
Yeah, I also think he's a victim of his weight class too, of his size. You know what I mean? That it's just not heralded as much. I mean, it took him, a nasty string of wins for to start really gaining some attention. And now it's the hardcores like us. We love him and we appreciate DJ. And he's one of those guys, like you said about Bisping. I really think he's going to be a guy 10 years on. Once he's done, people are going to be like, man, we should have appreciated when we had him, man. Look at what that guy could do. Look at the way he finished Ray Borg in that fashion. I think the excitability is absolutely there. But as I referred to earlier, there's just not the legacy fights. There's not those fights where you're like, man, this guy's in it. And then you look at that one kind of wrinkle in that McCall draw. It's like, when the title was first getting handed out. So I don't know. I think DJ still has plenty of time and health to make some greatness happen. Some more greatness. He's already made a lot of greatness happen. But to really cement that legacy is, the pound for pound best fighter to ever do it. I think it's possible. It's certainly possible. But I just think there's more work to be done, Yeah,
well, I think, one of those things that could happen, which is going to lead us into our first guest of the day, is fighting a guy like TJ Dillashaw for Demetrious Johnson. If he goes and fights, TJ, even if it means TJ coming down to 125, which, doesn't, to me, mean as much as, let's say, DJ going up and beating him at 135, because there's always something special about, beating a guy at a higher weight class and proving that even though you're the smaller guy, you're still the better guy. And listen, I've been an advocate for a long time saying I don't think guys should have to change weight classes to really build their resume, but like I said, that would help because it would be an established name, and DJ has fought at 135 before. But either way, if he fights TJ Dillashaw and beats him, then that's a big feather in the cap of Demetrious Johnson, then maybe we can revisit that conversation at this point. But that being said, Duane "Bang" Ludwig was in TJ Dillashaw's corner this past weekend at UFC 217 as he got a win over Cody Garbrandt, recaptured the Bantamweight Championships. Let's talk to the coach, Duane "Bang" Ludwig. Well, I appreciate you taking time to chat with me as always. Obviously, congrats to the team, of course, on an amazing win on Saturday night.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was long overdue. It was nice.
We talked, I remember we did the pre-show before The Ultimate Fighter when we talked about, TJ losing a very controversial decision to Dominic Cruz. I've said it a million times, I thought he won that fight, but it's one of those heartbreaking losses. I mean, how was it to see him come back and not only win, but to win the way he did, to knock out Cody, leave no question, there's no judges getting involved, there's no controversy, to kind of, put his stamp on the division and prove that he is the best bantamweight in the world?
It feels extremely good and rewarding to be a part of his career and to just see the way it finished like it did. Just like you said, finishing it with no doubt in our mind or no doubt in anybody's mind, that is the end result. There's no better way to, I guess you could have completely knocked him out, but it was an excellent finish. There was no controversy, like you said, and that was a very, very rewarding ending of the fight.
Yeah. How was the camp for this one, Duane? Because I know that, he had been out in Colorado, and I know, Muscle Farm decided to move their gym, and he was training at your gym, then he decided to go to California, where it looks like he's going to be starting his own facility, and you were traveling out there. You've kind of been the one constant, in his career and in his camp and everything, but how was this training camp leading up to the fight with Cody, considering there was a little bit of upheaval, in terms of, like, where he was at, you having to travel out there, those kind of things?
The camp went really, really well because when the fight was supposed to take place earlier this summer, we made that our first test run. That was like, okay, we're gonna do the camp. We're gonna do the camp out there, and then I'll travel and split time, and he'll do what he needs to do out there also. And it was. I'm glad that the second it got postponed. Well, it would have been the same result, I feel. But the more time we do anything, the better it becomes. So the second go-around, we basically did 2 camps out there in California. And the second go-around was a lot smoother transition for everybody. So I'm glad we had more time for it to happen. But again, it would have been the same result. And I've been traveling and teaching and training and doing this exact thing since I was 15. So this is what I do. There was no bumps in the road on my end or TJ's, and he was healthy for this camp. And he has always had a great crew of instructors around him, great wrestling coaches, great jiu-jitsu coaches, great crew of helpful teammates. And we have Kip Swanson, we have Chet Baylor's out there, we have Shorty Torres out there. We have a really good group of guys, Juan Archuleta. It all just kind of came together really well. But again, that's one of the things with TJ is he's so mentally strong. It doesn't really matter where we're at or what the circumstances are. We make the best of it. And like you said, that I am the one constant in his life, and we just know how to work well together. We know how to make sure that we can piece together a camp that's going to be beneficial to pull out his full potential. And short story, it was fucking awesome.
Let me ask you this, Duane, because, when TJ won the belt originally, when he knocked out Hayenbrow, let's be honest, that was a bit of a shock to people. Maybe not to you, but, to the world at large at that point. Hayenbrow looked unbeatable. Everyone thought he was, one of the pound-for-pound best in the sport. And then TJ goes out and dismantles him. And obviously it was no fluke because he did it a second time. But then coming back from, a very controversial loss to Dominic, 2 very dominant wins by TJ after that, but there was so much built into the rivalry and the teammate thing and the Ultimate Fighter, and to go out there and get a knockout in the second round the way he did. I know it's probably impossible to compare the two, but can you, as best you remember, like, what was there one moment that felt bigger than the other, or was it like both really special moments in your life to watch those 2 separate moments play out?
Yeah, there are some different elements on the back end of each story of those, but we only focus on ourselves. I think this is a good prime example for all the champions that won on this card, how St. Pierre handles himself, how Rose handles herself, how TJ handles himself. They're just quiet, respectful champions. I think there's something to be said about that as far as just minding your own business and focusing on the task at hand. A lot of people are saying that the former champions were too brash and being boastful and not leading by example in the most positive manner as the top of the figure of the sport should. It should be more respectful people. But I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is, not even necessarily the problem, I don't think that's the best route. The best route is just not necessarily to stir up the emotions of the masses, but to make sure that you're focusing on yourself and always consistently improving and focusing on what you can control, and that's getting better with each training session. And that's exactly what we do: is keep our heads in the sand and mind our own business and get better each and every time. And that's the reward, is putting out your full potential and then getting the belt back, which shouldn't have ever lost anyway. But it's good that the belt's back where it is, where it's supposed to be. It's home, and they're both really rewarding. But again, separate elements, but also it feels the same because we just focus on ourselves.
Yeah. I remember when we had the conversation before the Ultimate Fighter this season, when I had you and TJ and Matt Brown on the show, and we were talking about the show, and after it finished filming, and, you told me, you never wanted to be part of the storyline. That's not who you are. You're a coach, and you never lost any respect for the guys at Team Alpha Male. Obviously you worked with several of them, after leaving the team technically, and all those things. But, the way that there was so much personal emotion drawn into this, and it seemed like TJ just kind of brushed it off and let it go, and it seemed like he let everyone else, meaning his former teammates, kind of seethe with anger and get all built up emotionally. I mean, how was it for you? Because as you said, you didn't want to be part of the story, but that was so much of it, so much of the narrative of this fight, and it seemed like TJ never allowed that to get to him, and I imagine you were kind of the same way. You just never really played into the emotion of what they were trying to do.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. They spent so much time focusing on us and what we're doing and trying to point fingers, and it was really crazy. It was just like being back in high school or something. And again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier: is don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Focus on yourselves. I mean, that comes from a saying in the Bible. Don't worry about the splinter in your neighbor's eye when you have a big old log in your eye. Like that's the short story of saying mind your business. And look what happens when you do that. You can sit there and get on the microphone and use your power and your potential to push a message. Let it be a positive message, like, look, I'm out here training hard. I'm focused on what I need to do. And I'm not, trolling other people's social media channels and trying to, point fingers. It's just using the time to get better and improve. And that's the end result. Yeah. And I didn't really want to be part of the storyline of the drama. I'm a martial arts instructor, and I'm very blessed and happy to be able to work with TJ, and we work very well together. And that's my goal, is just to make sure that I'm pushing and sharing martial arts, helping people become better human beings and living by example. And I guess, you know what? Let me back that up. This just came to me. I don't mind being part of the storyline. They can talk crap on me and do whatever they need to do, and I'll be the example of how to handle that. I mean, I don't know if you've seen on the you watch the TV show, I'm sure. But the way all the drama is coming at us and the way we handled it, I mean, we needed this on TV, and this needed to be a public scenario to see how to handle these types of situations, these types of personalities, because it did become very personable for them. We, of course, they did quite a few things that tried to get under our skin, but we knew it was coming. We knew the true backstory of it all, and it's a good example of being loyal to those that are loyal to you. I don't want to stir up much drama, but TJ and I, we're true and honest to ourselves and to each other. And after all this is said and done, you can just look at the backstory and see who were the actual people that. I really wish I could make this juicy. I really could, but I'm gonna choose not to. Right? Again, the more professional thing, high road is just the lesson to be learned is to keep your head in the sand and mind your business, and get better.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue to my next question, Duane, because you've spent so much time. I mean, when you think about it, after TJ, quote unquote, lost to Dominic Cruz, a lot of people think, let's do an immediate rematch. It should have happened. And then, he goes on and has the fight with Uriah. And there was so much of TJ talk during that fight, which was kind of crazy. Then you had this Ultimate Fighter season and that way that played out. Then you had to lead up to this fight. TJ said it on Saturday night, and I think most people agree that, if Cody had been an 8-time defending champion, obviously you give him the immediate rematch. But in this case, I don't think the immediate rematch is warranted, and I don't think anyone else is screaming for that either. Is there any part of you that's kind of happy just to kind of put the Team Alpha Male drama behind you and focus on something new and just move past that? Because it has kind of eaten up TJ's life, and I got to imagine to a large extent your life, for really the last 2 or 3 years. Now you feels like you can kind of put that behind you a little bit.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to putting this behind us. And I don't think a lot of there should have never been any drama. I mean, all the drama was one-sided. It was just them attacking us constantly, and it should have never been that way. Because when I went back to Colorado to focus on my family, open up my business, everybody was invited to go back and forth and train. There was no lines of sand. I'll say that. I have open doors for people to come and train and to be under my guidance. I never said none of them can come and train. That was said, but not by me. I'll say that. I'm a martial arts instructor. I'm here to help people. I'm not here to draw any lines in the sand. I'm here to help and give back. I am, but I put in the amount of time that you put in. If you're as committed to your career, I'm as committed to you as you are to yourself. So it's just like that saying, you get what you put in. And TJ deserves everything he has because he worked so hard, and he truly is the best in the world. And that's why I do so much. I do so much for him. I will do whatever I need to do to make sure that he has what he needs to have to be successful. I'll go above and beyond for TJ and for those that want to go above and beyond for themselves.
Yeah. So now, Duane, I know as a coach, not only are you a martial arts coach, but you're a martial arts enthusiast. I know we've talked before about your video study and how you kind of, you obsess about it in a fun way, in a great way, not like in a bad way. So I got it. This is such a broad question, but I can only imagine this is why I'm excited to hear your answer. How excited are you as a coach to break down the chess match that would be TJ Dillashaw versus Demetrious Johnson?
Well, I've already done that. There's already notes and footage and game plans, and we already have what I feel. I've dedicated my life to martial arts since the age of 8. This is what I do for 31 years, and it's very fascinating and super fun for me to do this, and it's already done, and I'll continue to do more of it. But Demetrious Johnson has already been broken down, and we feel that we do have the upper hand in that fight. That's for sure.
Yeah. I know, obviously TJ has, as you mentioned, he has other coaches around, he has a nutritionist, a strength and conditioning coach that he's, spoke praises about. But at the end of the day,
Calavita.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, though, you are the head coach. You are the guy, in charge of the game plan and getting him ready. I mean, just in your opinion, because he started to make that cut, how do you feel about TJ moving to 125 for that fight?
I'm not a strength conditioning coach or a nutritionist, but who he has guiding him in that direction is Sam Calavita, and I believe and trust in that guy because of the results that he put TJ through for the first Cody camp, and then we were going to fight Demetrious, the transformation his body was taking in that route, and then to move it back up to 135 because the Cody fight came back because Demetrious wouldn't fight him the first time. To see, because when he goes through the dieting and the nutrition, and then I feel the end result in the sparring. Well, I don't spar with him, but watching the sparring and having him on the pads into my class, I see how his diet and nutrition is affecting his performance. I'm the end result of viewing his performance. And Sam Calavita knows his business, that is for sure. So I feel very comfortable in Sam handling TJ's strength conditioning, dieting, and weight cut for the fight against Demetrious Johnson at 125. And we want it at 125 so we can actually get it for the title down to catch weight.
Yeah.
And then the question before this, as far as the martial arts enthusiast, and Demetrious is, he's awesome. He is a very, very rare human being. So is TJ. I want to see this fight play out just because I'm a fight nerd.
Yeah, I've been.
And then also, I want to get it out. I want to get it out of the way also, so I can go to Matt Hume's gym, sit and talk with him about martial arts. But I can't do it until we fight. Again.
It's funny you say that because that was actually my next thing. I was like, talk about, just a great, combination of elements with TJ and DJ being two of the best in the world. And then you and Matt Hume, two of the most respectful coaches in the world. Again, there's no personal beef there, but that's just like you said, I'm a fight nerd. That's what I live for. And the idea of that fight just makes me so excited. There's just so many elements of what I want to see play out. And that's why I really do hope it's next, because there's just I can't think of I said all year long, Cody and TJ was my favorite fight of 2017. I think DJ and TJ would be my favorite fight of 2018 without a doubt.
Oh, 100%. I would love to see that fight. That is for sure. I really want to have this fight play out. Not only for the reason for getting the belt back, not to, have any bad blood towards that team or any of those guys, but just to get the belt back in the right place. So we're not looking to, they said this and they did this, and now we need to hurt them. It's not that. It's just, let them do their thing. And, we're fighting for the belt. Okay, cool. Let's break this game plan and break this guy down and figure it out and make it happen. But it wasn't ever to, just to say, I told you so, or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Duane, congratulations again on an amazing weekend, man. TJ looked better than ever. I know, like I said, I know all the other stuff, and TJ said it numerous times, any of the stuff that was being said, he just let it play off him. He went in there and put on a masterful performance and got the win, put a stamp on the rivalry, however you want to say it, and it was an amazing performance. And I know, as a coach, you have to get him ready for everything, the mental warfare, the physical warfare, everything. So, obviously, as a coach, you do deserve credit for what you did in putting that game plan together.
Yeah, I put the game plan together, but it was a lot of help. I guess if you want to put a title on it, I guess that would be his coach, but his wrestling coach, Dale Christensen, has been awesome. His jiu-jitsu coach, Felipe Monica, who's from Gracie Baja, he's been awesome. We're all working together very cohesively. It's not, I guess, again, I would be a head coach, but I can't take all the credit. And, I guess Buckles isn't the head coach of Alfamo anymore. Did you hear that?
I did hear that, yeah.
Yeah, I was curious what's going in that direction, but that just makes me think is, do you necessarily have to have a head coach? Because, as long as there's respectful teamwork between everybody, it just doesn't actually have to be a head coach, but just everyone working together. So hopefully things work out over there at their camp, and I don't think anyone has to actually be the head of anything. Just work together and make sure that the end result is your pupils are getting better, your students are getting better.
Absolutely. Well, Duane, again, congrats on an amazing weekend. Congrats to TJ, of course. I know your next big mission as TJ's coach is going to be, coaching him through fatherhood, because he's got that coming up in about a month or so.
Yeah, that's the next chapter of our relationship, right? Yes, sir. I'll give as much advice as I can.
I love it. Well, Duane, thank you again for the time, man. I really appreciate it, and congrats on a great weekend. I'm sure we will catch up soon.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Mr.
All
Martin.
Right, talk to you soon.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Duane Ludwig, of course, always dropping knowledge. TJ Dillashaw with a huge win at UFC 217. Duane, that was, that was a back and forth war. Cody nearly got a finish at the end of the first round. TJ comes battling back in the second. He gets a knockout of his own. I have a feeling we're a long way from that rivalry being finished, but I feel like we are going to end up putting that in the back burner for a little while now because I love Cody Garbrandt. I think he's supremely talented. I think he will absolutely get back to that title again, but I can't disagree with TJ Dillashaw when he says I don't think he deserves an immediate rematch.
No, I mean, you figure that, that was his first title defense and then losing it. Okay, cool. Dominic Cruz didn't get an immediate rematch with Garbrandt. They're making him fight, and he's fighting Jimmy Rivera. That's the right move, I believe. I just think, if you just keep, if you only recycle guys when you really have to. And I know we'll get to this later, but I think Joanna and Rose, they probably run that back because, she had, 5 or 6 defenses, and then that division's pretty much cleaned out, run it back. That's okay with me. But for that bantamweight picture, man, you got, like I said, Cruz Rivera, you got the Mighty Mouse thing lingering. You can afford to do a few of those fights, and it's not going to hurt this picture. But, the Garbrandt and Dillashaw thing, the way the first round ended and the way Cody was getting kind of loose on him, and we start seeing the taunting and the dancing and the pointing, I'm like, oh, man, he's about to style on him. He's about to start doing the robot breakdancing like he did against Cruz, and then Dillashaw bounced back, man, and came back strong. So hats off to him, bro. And that was I think you're exactly right. I think we're far, 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 far from seeing these two done. And you put any mix of them, just to be fair, any mix of Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw, and Cody Garbrandt, and those 3 gents are going to dance for the next 5 years.
Yeah, well, the cool thing about it is here with TJ being champion again, because listen, I agree with TJ about the Dominic Cruz fight. I didn't feel like he lost that fight. It was a very close fight though, so I wasn't complaining that Dominic Cruz won that fight. I scored it for TJ, but Dominic winning was, it was a close fight is my point. I didn't really see, it's no controversy, I guess I should say. But you got Dominic fighting Jimmy Rivera coming up. That's clearly going to define the next number 1 contender. I still hope they do TJ Dillashaw and Demetrious Johnson because I think that's a big fight. It's the biggest fight Demetrious could have, and it actually speaks to the whole, pound for pound, greatest of all time argument. And there's some hype, there's some buzz around it. And let's be honest, there hasn't been a lot of that for Demetrious Johnson's fights in recent years. I mean, outside of John Dodson, who kind of, came after him verbally, he's really never had an opponent that actually, people were that enthusiastic about him fighting before it happened. So I think Demetrious versus TJ Dillashaw is the fight to make. I understand the risky run if TJ goes down and gets beat, then he comes back to bantamweight and he just lost to a flyweight. But at the same time, you kind of forget about that, especially if he gets to renew his rivalry with Dominic Cruz, if you get Cody Garbrandt out there fighting again, or Jimmy Rivera, young guy who's coming up the rankings, is kind of, quietly, positioned himself into the number 3 spot overall, which is crazy, as quietly as he's done it. And then you got guys like John Lineker. I mean, I think right now Cody can go out there, and I think he's got 2 fights that make a lot of sense for him. He can go out and fight John Lineker, which is a fight he was supposed to have last year when he ended up fighting Thomas Almeida. I think that, or not Thomas Almeida, when he fought the kid in Pittsburgh. I can't remember his name, the grappler kid, Mendez. That was supposed to be John Lineker. I think that's a fantastic fight. Lineker, of course, just coming off a win in his last fight. Lineker and Garbrandt is still a fantastic fight, and you're guaranteed fireworks in that one. Or you can do Aljamain Sterling if he gets past Ronnie Yahya in his next fight. I know Sterling, Aljo, and Cody have shared a few words over Twitter and things like that, so you can make those fights still interesting. Give Cody a chance to bounce back. Maybe that one and one more, and then you can run back the Dillashaw fight. But, I think immediate rematches need to be saved for, like you said, Joanna is a person who I believe deserves an immediate rematch. She was a 5-time defending champion, and as you said, Duane, she's wiped out everybody else. She danced on Jessica Andrade in May, and Jessica Andrade just clubbed the shit out of Claudia Gadelha like a month and a half ago. So, can you really? Yes, Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas is a very interesting stylistic matchup, but is that really the same story as, Joanna trying to get her title back? And I don't find Joanna to be a Ronda Rousey type where she's going to sit out a year and, hope to get a rematch. I think she's going to get right back in the gym. She's going to get fired up. She's going to get motivated. And we're going to see that rematch. And because, like I said, there's really no one else. You look at that top 5, Joanna's run through everybody. The only person who might have an argument is Tisha Torres if she can get past Michelle Waterson in December. But Tisha just lost to Rose not that long ago. So again, I think Joanna and Rose is a case where you do a rematch. Cody and TJ, not so much.
I agree absolutely on all fronts, and I think what we laid out was the different statuses of the respective divisions, because it's true, man. I mean, if you think about it, okay, say you do Andrade and Namajunas. Okay, well then what's Joanna do? Joanna just sits out of sight, and I know it's Rose is the queen now, so it's like you don't really care about it's not about her who dictates it, but it kind of still does, because she's the one that destroyed the division, and here comes Rose and puts her out. Okay, well, so then you run it back, and then you still have Carolina's out there. You said Torres, Watterson, Andrade. I mean, there's fighters, and there's more fighters coming. So I think there's a healthy enough situation there where you can run that championship fight back. But as far as I want to mention one interesting point for you were talking about whether TJ goes down or DJ comes up. I really think that, I mean, for the sellability wise, I think it's the opposite. I think DJ needs to come to 135, because I think that's where the storyline's at, right? The last time he lost a fight was to Dominic Cruz at 135, correct?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, so then say he goes up and dominates, and like, oh man, not as only he the 125 champ, but now he's a 135-pound champ. That's fantastic, and he's the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. Or if he loses his first fight in forever, they're like, okay, well, that's because he was fighting up at a weight class. Now he's back home. If you're Dillashaw and you go down to 25 and you get your ass whooped by a dude that's 10 pounds smaller, then you come up to a 35-pound, well, he's back to natural weight, and you're like, you still got your ass kicked by a little guy. You know what I mean?
It's tough. It's tough. It is a tough thing. I just want to see that fight. That's really what it comes down to for me. I want to see that fight.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's different ways you can do it. I mean, you look at fighters like Conor, who didn't lose popularity in a loss, I think it's great. I think a lot of fans want to see the fight. I think that's a fight they want to see DJ in, and that would be a big surge for him, a much needed and deserved surge for him. Dillashaw's stock's never been higher, coming off that blistering of Cody Garbrandt. Do it, man. Let's do it. And then let like I said, Garbrandt fight Lineker, Rivera and Cruz go at it. And then then they can sort out that winner, the who gets next when they get across that bridge.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons why DJ has struggled so much in terms of getting mainstream attention or getting attention from the casual fan is because, just like anything else, you want the guy to face somebody that you feel like is going to beat him. Now, because DJ's never going to be that guy to build a fight the way that Conor or Bisping does. So you need someone that's going to go in there. And listen, the fact is when Dana White said TJ Dillashaw was next for Demetrious, immediately people were saying, oh man, he might beat him. He might be the guy to dethrone Demetrious Johnson. He might be the guy to finally beat him and hand him a loss. And listen, I have all the respect in the world for Tim Elliott, for Ray Borg, for Henry Cejudo, all the guys that have fought Demetrious Johnson, but there's not a single one of them where I truly felt that I shouldn't pick Demetrious Johnson in that fight. Now, maybe in the long run, even with TJ, maybe I'll ultimately break it down and still pick DJ to win. But I'm not sure. And you can match up anybody else at flyweight, Duane, and tell me the truth. I mean, just be honest. If I said DJ's going to rematch Henry Cejudo, DJ's going to fight, what's the guy's name? Jussier Formiga. He's going to fight this guy, that guy. Is there anyone at 125 pounds currently that you're not just going to immediately say Demetrious wins?
Yes, and I'm not saying I'm giving you the no. You're correct on the immediacy. If I had to say right now, no. But the guy that I think is the most complete guy at that weight outside of Demetrious, but give him another year or two, is Kyoji Horiguchi. Or the Gooch, man. I think Kyoji has I think he's a special talent. You spent time at ATT. Like that kid lives there by himself. There's no other Japanese speaking people in that facility, but he lives there when he's not fighting in Ryzen now. And the kid's just a treat. He works his butt off, but he said, in the very broken English that we've got a chance. If you get a chance, check that interview out, Flow Combat. It's hilarious. But he said, the mouse. I take the mouse again. He's like, I don't care about UFC, but the mouse. So I think that DJ got him in the first round at the very end of the first round, I believe. in that fight, right?
Yeah, I got him. It was like 4:59 in the final rounds, like the latest you can get for a finish.
Yeah. Oh, the final round. I said first. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was like right at the very, very end. And but that stands the point. That's still 2 years off for a young kid like Kyoji. Demetrious is that man right now, and he can look. I understood the Borg thing, right? He's like, I want the legacy, I want the record. Okay, well, you got that now, and it's gonna be hard. That's gonna be a hard record to break. Now let's get into these legacy fights, but you got to pick where you feel best, where you feel safe, what plays in your favor. So that's where the politicking begins. But I got a strange feeling, DeMartini. I think we're gonna actually see this one. I think we're the era of the much alluded to, never delivered upon super fights is over, and I think money fights are I think it's a time where it's needed more than it ever has been before. So you still have your divisional tilts, and they are great. But then you have certain circumstances where you can do some fun stuff, and I think we're going to see a bit more of that in 18.
Yeah, you absolutely may be right. This weekend, it's funny, we come off that incredible event at UFC 217, and we always talk about the UFC schedule, are there too many fights? Do they have fights kind of piled on to each other? And, in general, I do think the UFC could lessen their number of events a little bit. They do, 40, I don't know, was it 40 or 42 events a year? I think you could cut off 4 or 5 of those and have a little bit more of a fan-friendly schedule, that kind of thing. And generally, though, I'm not one of those people that complains about too many fights. This is what I do for a living. I like covering fighting, and I like fighting. But this is a case where this fight card coming up this weekend with Norfolk, where you got Dustin Poirier, our next guest, taking on Anthony Pettis in the main event. You feel like this fight card is getting, shadowed a little bit because of the way UFC 217 played out. Now, you can't ever predict that. All 3 title fights, as highly unlikely as it was, could have stunk. It could have been a bad event and whatever the case, and then everyone would be clamoring to move on to this Norfolk event. But the fact is you had a massive, massive event, and you got this fight card coming up in Virginia this weekend, which really got overshadowed, and it kind of bums me out because this card in Virginia is straight fire.
Oh, absolutely, man. If you just look at the profile fights, right, man, like how the hell is Matt Brown versus Diego Sanchez boring? There's not even a scientific chance. Not even a remote, who's your butcher boy's name? Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, even Neil would be like, cosmically, this can't suck. You know what I mean? Like a quasar. But anyway, and then the main event, man, banger. And it's a banger with implications. So, you look at those 4 individuals and they're going to bring the heat. It's a pretty awesome undercard too, man. So I think it's going to steal a little bit of its shine because the 217 was so awesome. But it's on free TV. There's divisional implications at play. So I think those always bode well for the promotion.
Yeah, we'll see how it all unfolds. Right now, let's talk to the guy who will fight in the main event against Anthony Pettis this Saturday night. Let's talk to the Diamond, Dustin Poirier. What's going on, man?
What's happening, brother?
Not much, man. Appreciate you taking time to chat with me as always. How's everything?
Good. Of course, man. Always make time for you, bro.
I appreciate it. I'll see you down in Virginia, man. Always a good time seeing you down at the fights as well. So I'll see you down there in a couple weeks.
Definitely.
So how's everything, man? Obviously, camp is, kind of closing down. Got the last couple weeks coming up here. I'm sure things are intense as always down in Florida.
Yeah, you know it, man. It's been a long one, but it's coming down to an end, and I'm feeling good, man. My body feels good, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I think I think this is an amazing fight. Obviously, Anthony Pettis is a former champion. You're back in the main event, which is absolutely where I think you belong, but I know last time we talked was after the situation, from your last fight. So I'm just going to throw it out because I'm curious. Why aren't you fighting Eddie Alvarez? Is there some mystic secret that I don't know about?
Nah, man. I mean, I wish I could tell you something, but I'm not the matchmaker. I don't know. That's the fight I wanted and stuff, but, now we're focused on Pettis, obviously.
Yeah. Was there any disappointment? I mean, I know you had unfinished business with him. Let's be honest. And you and I talked about this, and we both agreed that it was an illegal strike, and I thought it should have been a disqualification. And I don't want to rehash everything all over again, but it just seemed like a natural fit to have that rematch. And then they did the Ultimate Fighter season, and I get that, but it just seemed, I don't know, that just of all the rematches that we didn't get to see, that's one of those ones that just really didn't make sense to me.
Right, because the illegal strike changed the
completely changed a fight, the outcome of a fight and everything that was happening. So, yeah, it's crazy, man. I don't know anything about this sport, like the reason they do things anymore. So not just fight.
Yeah. Do you feel like, at some point down the road, you're going to have to see him again? It kind of feels like inevitable. You're going to have to run into him at one point in the future.
I mean, we have to fight. There's no way about it. We have to.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts, when the UFC came and had this offer? I mean, not that, there's a consolation prize necessarily, but, another former champion, Anthony Pettis, and you get to headline a card. So, obviously that's always a good spot I'm sure you want to be in.
Right. Going from fighting one world champion to another is a great place to be in, to show that I'm at that level with the top guys in the world. I got respect for Anthony Pettis. I've been watching him, and we've been fighting the same cards for a lot of years now, both coming from the WC. But he's been to the mountaintop. He's a guy who's he's held the belt in the WC at 55. He's held the belt in the UFC at 55, defended the belt in the UFC. So, he's definitely another good measuring stick to show the world where I'm at.
Yeah. What have you thought of Anthony's performances? He came back and he had the fight against Jim Miller, which was an outstanding fight. And obviously you fought Jim Miller, so you know what that's like. But, he had some ups and downs, but it seems like he kind of got things back together. It kind of feels like now is the right time to fight a guy like this because, I don't know, you tell me, but it almost feels like you don't want to beat a guy when it seems like he's on kind of a downswing of his career, but it seems like he fixed things, kind of got things back on track, and now, this kind of feels like, the Anthony Pettis of old. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the way it feels like.
Yeah, he might have found his groove again and got things together with his camp or whatever. There's millions of things that happen to make you perform less than you should have, and that. But he looked good against Miller, and Miller's not a guy who's really easy to look good against. Man, he's gritty and tough and hard to put away. And I actually was cage side for that fight, and it was exciting. The crowd loved it. I loved it. It was a fun fight to watch. So. Man, I'm looking forward to this fight. The fans should look forward to it. It's going to be a great fight.
Yeah. When Anthony was on top of the world, when he was champion, one of the things he did so well was with his striking. He was so good with his striking, especially on the outside. This is a guy who, kind of picked people apart on the outside. You remember the body kick to, Cowboy Cerrone, the head kick against Joe Lauzon, some of the other things he did, when he was on his way to the championship, this just guy, really, really dangerous guy from the outside. But it seemed like, people started figuring out, Dos Anjos did it, and of course Eddie Alvarez did it, where, when they wouldn't stand on the outside with him, he had a little bit more of a struggle. Now, you're a guy who's good on the inside and the outside. We saw what you did to Pettis on the inside, or to Alvarez on the inside, and we've seen what you've done from the outside. Do you feel like, you do have the more complete game, even in the striking realm, not to take away from your other parts of your game, but do you feel like in the striking realm, you still have more weapons than Anthony Pettis does?
I believe I have more firepower, and I believe I'm a better striker, a better wrestler, and my jiu-jitsu is better. I'm really confident going into this fight. I feel like I can beat him anywhere, and I feel like I will.
Yeah. When you face a guy who is so well known as a striker, and I think that's, what Pettis is known for. Now, of course, the guy does have a lot of submissions. I mean, he won the title with the submission. People kind of forget that a little bit, but it's typically... He
has more submissions than he has knockouts, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So people kind of forget about that, but most of the time that he's gotten submissions, it's been when guys have attempted to take him down, which is, kudos to him for having that kind of skill set. But do you feel like you can kind of pick your poison in this fight because you can strike with him, you can decide to out-wrestle him, you can decide to out-jiu-jitsu him? I mean, do you feel like you just have more ways to attack him than maybe he has ways to attack you?
Yeah, the way fights stack up and looking at all these different things, man, I'm just confident that I'm going to beat him everywhere. And it's a 5-round fight. So the better fighter usually wins in the long distance, and that's how I'm going into this fight. I want to show my full skill set. I want to beat him up everywhere. I want to take advantage of every opportunity. And when one presents itself to finish him, I'm going to jump on it. I'm trying to put him away and trying to move forward.
Yeah, you've been in 5-round fights before. You prepared for 5-round fights before, so this isn't the first rodeo for you, Dustin. But how much different is it, when you are getting ready for a main event? Because we have seen some guys. I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure you probably know who I'm talking about. But we have seen some guys when they get into a 5-round fight. they approach it differently because obviously they're worried or maybe they're concerned about going into that, 24th and 25th minute. So they fight a little differently in that first couple of rounds in a way that maybe we didn't see otherwise. How do you do it? Because you've done it before. You're a fast starter. You're not typically the guy we think of that kind of waits till the third round to turn it on. But I mean, do you have to be careful not to be too cautious about reserving energy for a 25-minute fight that kind of takes you out of your game? Because I know you've seen it, and I've seen it too, where some guys I think it gets in their head a little bit when they got that 5-round fight.
For me, man, I prepare more about the weight cut. I don't change the way I fight. I'm going to fight the same. I prepare more about the weight cut and my diet ahead of the fight, so I'm not, I try to cut a little bit less weight so I don't hurt my body as much, and break my muscles down as much. And I'm not worried about getting into crazy scrambles or getting into good exchanges, because if I'm feeling tired, I promise you this guy's just as tired or more tired than me. And then it goes to mental toughness, and I have the will, to do anything in the world. So that's not even a problem, man. My cardio is incredible.
Yeah. We've seen it, since you've been at lightweight, you have finished, most of your opponents, but you have gone into those deep waters. I mean, you battled with Joe Duffy. Obviously, Jim Miller is another case of a guy who was able to stick around, but you battled and won the fight. But when you look at Anthony Pettis, do you feel like, whether this goes all 5 rounds or maybe you get that knockout early on, do you feel like either way, you feel like you've got the advantage in this fight that you can do either? You can pull out the 5-round decision, or maybe you do knock him out in the first or second round.
For sure. I mean, it's just what opportunity is going to present itself. I'm prepared for both. I'm in great shape. I have the skills to put them away, and also have the skills to fight a long fight and be the better fighter and show my skill set in the full, fashion that I would like to. I'd like for this fight to go a few rounds.
Yeah. Is there still something special, though? I mean, you go out and finish a guy like Anthony Pettis. I mean, the only guy who's ever finished him, was Max Holloway. And listen, I mean, Max's performance was amazing. Again, Max Holloway's a guy you're familiar with, of course. But Anthony was, drained out from the weight cut. We knew that was not, probably the smartest move. I mean, you've blatantly told me a number of times, how much fighting at featherweight nearly killed you. And, one of the reasons you're a much happier guy at lightweight. But is there still kind of a feather in your cap?
And I believe
Go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead.
No, I said, I believe I'm a bigger guy, heavier guy than Anthony Pettis, So me cutting the 45 was real tough.
Yeah, exactly. So that being said, though, do you feel like there is still a certain feather in your cap if you go out there and you knock out or you TKO or you finish Anthony Pettis? Because that's still something that, basically one guy has done, and it was, in the one weight class where he probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah, and that was kind of, if I remember correctly, that fight was kind of like a TKO. He might have hurt him to the body, or Pettis covered up and the ref stopped it. That's not a knockout to me. I'll be the first guy to knock him out cold. That'd be a feather in the cap.
Yeah. Do you feel like, if you put your game on, you can absolutely do that?
I can do that to anybody in the world.
Where you're at right now, and I know I probably ask you this question every single time I talk to you, Dust. You're probably sick of me asking the same question, but I always feel like it is this way because it seems like, I see the progression in your fights. I see the improvement you made after the Michael Johnson fight, and I see the improvements and the things you've done differently right now. I know it's such a generic question, but as you go into this fight, I mean, do you feel like you are hitting a certain stride, a certain peak in your career to where it feels like, this is where you belong? You belong in these main events, these big fights are going to get you that much closer to a title shot. Because I know I bring it up all the time, but I know that's something that still, sits in the back of your head.
Man, of course. I'm a guy who has staying power. I'm a guy who's put in the time, put in the years, never said no to a fight, never missed weight, never pulled out of a fight. And this will be my 21st fight with the Zuffa. I've never agreed to fight and then backed out. Every time I've stumbled, I've gotten up and made myself better. I've always learned from my mistakes. I'm a guy I am perfecting my craft, and I'm 100% committed to being the best fighter that I can be. I feel like I am the best fighter in the world when I step in there, and I know I can be, and I know I'm going to prove that one day.
Yeah. Do you feel like, the performances you put on, especially when you look at, what you've done over the last couple of years, there's a reason why you're in the position you're in, why you're the main event, why you're getting these kind of marquee positions, because it feels like you have earned it, but also, let's be honest, people like watching you fight, and there is something to that. I'm not trying to dig on John Fitch, who I like very much, but you remember when he was in the UFC, he didn't get those kind of marquee spots because people weren't exactly, jumping up and down to watch him fight necessarily. I think it's a different thing with you where not only are you good and you're in the rankings, but people like watching you fight.
Yeah, I don't think I've had a boring fight in the UFC or in the WC. I mean, I fight to finish. I'm not trying to point guys out and slide by. I'm trying to hurt guys, do damage. There will be blood, and I don't shy away from that. This is fighting. I know what I'm getting myself into. A lot of these guys are good athletes, and they fight because they make money doing it and they have some success. I'm an athlete, but I'm a fighter first.
Yeah,
and I think it shows every time I go out there.
Let me ask you, with that said, I just kind of segue into that, Dustin. You mentioned that, there's this kind of, I won't say argument, but there's like this a little bit of debate. Some fighters say, it's better to be an athlete than a fighter, and some people say it's better to be a fighter than an athlete. Obviously, it seems like you come down on the side of being a fighter, not necessarily you're not an athlete, but do you understand that argument when people say that? Like Cody Garbrandt just said that to me the other day. He's like, I'm a fighter, I'm an athlete, but I'm a fighter first, and your TJ Dillashaw say, no, I'm an athlete first, and I think that's the way you got to approach fighting. I don't know, you tell me, there's always that BJ Penn mentality in my head where it always says, at the end of the day, this is a fight and we need to be fighters.
For sure. I mean, that's what drew me to the sport, just the pureness of the fight back in the day, that's what I love about it. Hold on one second, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, you there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, yeah, man. As I get older, I can't be a barbarian. I can't be barbaric, just going there toe to toe, see who falls first. There has to be some method to the madness. But make no mistake, there will be madness.
Yeah. Well, like you said,
I'm getting old. I'm getting older, and I want my daughter. I want to be there for my daughter. I want to fight smarter. A lot of years left in my career. This is going to be my 36th fight. I'm training smarter and fighting smarter. But like I said, make no mistake about it, there will be a fight.
Yeah. Let me ask you this before I get you out of here, Dustin. I retweeted your thing yesterday, the what you're doing with your clothes from this fight. You did something similar with this for the last fight. For people that maybe didn't see that or maybe didn't read that, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing for this fight? Because as I said yesterday, man, I think it's amazing you continue to do these kind of things, and I think you're an example to everybody doing this. But can you kind of explain the cause you're fighting for this time?
Sure. The last fight I'll just talk a little bit about the last fight I raised. We ended up making 3,000 meals. We raised money for 3,000 meals for people who needed it, and my community in my hometown of Lauzon. And that's what I'm really focused on giving back to. Is I'm not that I'm against any big organizations or anything, but I want to give back to my direct community where I'm from and where me and my family live. So last time we did 3,000 meals. This time we're doing earlier this month in my hometown on actually a street I went to high school on. A police officer responded to a call at a gas station, and the guy hopped out the car and shot him and, killed him there. I mean, this is where I used to run around on the streets when I was younger in middle school and high school. And it's just crazy, man. But he was married and he had 3 and so this money's going directly to his wife and kids, and it's not going through any organization. Not saying that any organizations are bad, but whatever I get for this fight kit, when I sell it, get a check and hand it directly to her. So, I'm just trying to help out, man.
Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing. I know you don't do it for the accolades. You're not doing it for people like me saying it's a great thing to do, but it is a great thing to do, and I just think it's amazing you're doing that. And it's awesome to be able to give back and be in those kind of situations. And as you said, it's something you can directly help with. Like you said, it's nothing against other organizations, but this is something you're literally doing for yourself and doing for these people. I think that's amazing. And as I said, I know you're not doing it for that, but just to acknowledge it, man, I think it is awesome you're doing that.
I appreciate it, man. And from here on, that I have, I'm going to be doing the same thing. So it'll be different charities or different events or organizations or families, but somebody's going to benefit from, fight kits. And I look to do more and more in the future, not just fight kits, but that I can commit to that as of right now.
Yeah.
Fight kits, every fight I'll be doing something.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Dustin, man, I always appreciate the time. Obviously, safe training the rest of the way, safe travels down to Virginia, and look forward to seeing you down there in a couple weeks, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right, talk to you soon, buddy.
Yep.
Bye. Duane, you were down at American Top Team not that long ago. I was down there in May, of course, when I spent a week with Joanna Jacek, but of course I was around everybody, and I know Dustin Poirier very well, known him for a lot of years, you've known him for a lot of years. One of my highlights of that week I spent in Florida was watching a sparring session between Dustin Poirier and Jorge Masvidal, because it was literally like I got a free UFC pay-per-view without having to pay for a ticket, because it was amazing. I'm assuming you probably saw some of the same kind of craziness when you were down there.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing is that there's that little trio right there. There's Masvidal, Poirier, and Colby Covington. Getting to watch them work out, and behind you, Joanna's working out, and then Amanda Nunes. I mean, like, the people don't understand, I think, about the jobs, the careers we have. That's the thing right there, man. We get to see things that a lot of other people aren't privy to, and that's kind of the that's the kind of payoff right there is, if you love fighting and you love the process of it, like being in Albuquerque and watch Condit and Cerrone spar, it's like, man, we're never going to see those two guys fight, but this is awesome. Or watching Dominic Cruz just piece up people at Alliance, it's like, or Team Alpha Male, man, like those guys SWAT, like on their sparring days. It's crazy. But yeah, man, I like that little crew right there. I mean, they stick together. Obviously after Colby beat Damian Maia, he said those things and all that backlash, and Masvidal was like, that's my brother. He's insane. Poirier's in that group too. He doesn't speak out much, but I'll tell you what, man, Dustin's looking slick. Dustin's looking slick, and he's pissed off because of the way the Alvarez situation worked out. He's plenty mad. So I think that we're gonna see a fired up Dustin Poirier, man. And the thing about it is, he's got a family now. He's got a beautiful little daughter. And when that happens, there's a lot more to fight for. And Dustin's the guy who's fought for everything in his life to have it. And he feels like he has a point to make. And I agree. I think it's gonna be great. And then I think on the flip with Pettis, I've said this for a long time. A good friend of mine, Cub Swanson, is very similar in a way that and that's something that if you look at the downturn that Cub had or the setbacks, it's because confidence faded, like he started to doubt himself in situations. A fully confident Cub Swanson is a nightmare, and that same with Pettis. When he's rocking and rolling, he's folding up cowboy, he's doing all, Benson off the cage, that kind of craziness. When he's not, he gets RDA'd, so I think we're gonna have a shootout.
Yeah, I think this is a great fight. I gotta admit, I'm still a little bummed out that, listen, I'm very excited for Detroit when we get to see Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje throw down. That's a phenomenal fight. That's just going to be one of those crowd-pleasing affairs. There's no way that fight's going to suck. As you said, cosmically, that fight cannot suck. But
trademark.
But I was at the fight with Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez, and I truly believe, this is nothing against Eddie, I truly believe he did deserve to be DQ'd, but he didn't get DQ'd. It ended up being a no contest, and that's one that just boggles my mind. I still, to this day, do not understand how you did not book that rematch, or even book them for the Ultimate Fighter. I mean, I understand Gaethje has a lot of shine, coming up the Michael Johnson fight, one of the greatest fights of the year, what a debut, but it's not like Justin Gaethje's name is that much bigger than Dustin Poirier, and I think you would have got a little bit more fire, because if you've been watching this season of The Ultimate Fighter, which judging by the ratings not very many people are doing, but if you are watching The Ultimate Fighter, you'll know that Gaethje and Alvarez, there's no back and forth. There's literally, I don't even know they talk to each other this season, okay? And I'm not saying Poirier and Alvarez are going to be, Conor and his opponents, or, Rousey and Tate or anything, but I guarantee you they would have clashed a little bit more, on that show than what we're seeing this season. I'm not saying you have to have the drama to sell, but I mean, it would have, made for at least a little bit more interesting TV. This is the one fight of logic that just doesn't make sense. Why do you not book that rematch? And I have nothing against this Anthony Pettis fight. I think this could potentially be just as big of a win for Dustin because he's a former champion. You could argue Anthony Pettis is a bigger name than Eddie Alvarez, depending on, who you ask. I mean, maybe Eddie after Conor's fight, he got a little bit more shine, but, Anthony Pettis looked like he was going to be the next face of the UFC when he won the title. Didn't really turn out too well for him, but so this is is going to be a big win if he gets it as well. But I don't know. I still to this day cannot understand, cannot fathom why the UFC didn't book that rematch.
And you're not alone in that. And one person that's super baffled, just like you, is Poirier. I mean, like, Dustin, after that fight, if you look at the stuff on Flow Combat during the road trip, and he really aired it out, man. He's pissed. He's pissed because Alvarez, in his opinion, at first he gave him the benefit of the doubt, but then he realized, he's like, the way Alvarez acted after the fight, that he looked for the way out, that he believes he threw the cheap shot on purpose. But at the end of the day, Alvarez got a flat rate to fight. He made his money regardless. I mean, Dustin, who was winning that fight handily up until that last sequence that led to the DQ, Dustin got half his money. And as far as, between me, you, and your audience, public, I guess, that Dustin's been pretty vocal about he didn't get his other half, and UFC didn't go do right. And then, okay, you're not going to give me my money, give me my rematch. Let me finish what I started. And then that's what he thinks is going to happen. And then all of a sudden he hears the tough announcement and he's like, what the hell? So yeah, Poirier is mad, bro. And he feels like the UFC's worked him over. And that I think that just goes more towards his focus, though, about doing it for self. Because, Damon, you and I have covered the sport for a long time, you longer than I. But we've seen a lot of guys get caught up in that idea that there is such thing as a company man, like, oh, I'll step up on short notice, I'll help. And then they lose and they get cut. You know what I mean? Or they don't get the title shot they're promised, or this, or there's somebody that leapfrogs them. In this sport, it's so hectic and chaotic, and it's ever-changing. You see a guy who feels like he's kind of stuck, and that was the thing, is Dustin's very vocal right there saying that, the UFC's not going to show the highlights. They're not going to show anything in leading up to Alvarez, and that was one of his best performances. His one fight removed from being a former champion. That was the fight to make. Get it back in there, get the heat. But they went a different way. And yes, it's an equally important fight. As you said, possibly even bigger compared because Eddie Alvarez won on no Wheaties box or Metro PCS commercials. So, yeah, man, I think it's a big opportunity. I think it's a big fight for the division. You got to figure it's right up there with Khabib and Barboza, whatever Tony's going to do next. So it's right there. It puts the winner right there in that mix of elite tier 55ers.
Yeah. Well, another guy who always puts on great fights, and he kicks off the main card this weekend, is Joe Lauzon. He takes on Clay Guida. I joke with Joe during the interview, and I'll say it right now. It's kind of funny to me that these two had never fought before, because they've both been in the UFC for so long. You felt like you kind of felt like you had already seen this fight, but it never has happened before. Now Joe is going to battle Clay Guida in the kickoff fight to the main card. So let's talk to one of the best guys in the sport. You would literally have to dig to the bottom depths of the world to find someone that doesn't legitimately like Joe Lauzon. So let's talk to Joe Lauzon right now. Joe, what's going on, man? How's everything?
It's good. How's it going?
Not too bad, man. Appreciate taking time to chat as always.
No problem.
So how's everything, man? Obviously, fight is just a little over a week away. I asked the same thing at the start of every interview with you, but I'm assuming everything's going well, or you could probably tell me it's going crappy. But how is everything going into the fight?
Yeah, no, everything's been good. Everything's going really well. Entire camp has been good. I've been healthy all the way through. I keep joking that I gotta keep myself and Clay both wrapped in bubble wrap so that nothing changes. But I feel good. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, you and Clay have been in the UFC, together and separately, obviously, for a long time. When the fight was made, I had to look back at your record, and I was like, how did they not fight before? It felt like this is a fight we should have seen.
Yeah, I don't really know. I think just different places, different times. I think coming off wins and losses at different times. It's a big division too. I don't know how many lightweights are, but there's got to be 50 or 60 of us at any given time, I would guess. It just didn't line up.
Yeah, we always talk about bonuses and the things you do in your fights. You're notorious for putting on exciting fights. I'm sure you saw as soon as this fight was announced, every website in the world said, just go ahead and write out the bonus checks right now because this is going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, do you enjoy that when people see your fight announced? They're just like, yep, okay, well, we're going to see some sort of bonus in this fight.
Yeah, I'm glad that people get excited right off the bat. When a matchup like this gets made, it's nice. You don't want us to have to sell anything. We don't have to tell people it's going to be awesome. We're both just going to sit back and train and, let the fight happen. And, it'll be good. It'll be good. We won't have to, I don't think we have to go and tell people it's going to be a good fight. I think people just know.
Yeah, you obviously you've had all kinds of fights during your career. You're best known for a lot of your finishes. You've had knockouts, you've had submissions. That's kind of what you've done. I was looking at your record. I rarely ever do this for an interview because we talk so often that I just kind of know your record. But I kind of I was like, who did he face last? Like I kind of remembered, and it was Stevie Ray. And I looked at your record, and I noticed you had the Stevie Ray fight, Marcin held, and then Jim Miller. Jim Miller's a fight we talked about before that, we thought you won that fight. And that's just the sport. You go through that. But I was looking at your record, and you're a stats guy. Did you know that these last 3 fights were all like split decisions, basically, and you had never had a split decision before in your entire career?
Yeah. It stings. I didn't have any even decision wins, period, until, I think the March and Held fight. I think that was the first decision I'd ever won, I think. I don't know. You could argue I should be 3-0 for my last 2. You could argue I could be 0-3 for my last 3. They're all super close fights. You never know what you're getting into, what judges are watching, and what's going on. But it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy the way it works out like that. I have so many fights and so many decisive, finishes and everything like that, and then you get 3 split decisions all at once.
Yeah. Is it ever frustrating because, as you said, there are going to be the camps who are going to say you should have won all 3 fights. And then, as you said, there's going to be people who thought you lost all 3 fights. But when you have it in your head that you're that close to, winning, I mean, like I said, the Jim Miller fight, I did score for you. The Marcin Held fight, we talked before, was a very close fight. Yep. And Stevie Ray, same thing. It was very, very close fight. I mean, is it frustrating when you kind of feel, maybe when you go back and rewatch, you're like, man, you know what? I feel like I should have gotten that one. I feel like I should have had a win there.
I thought I won the Jim Miller fight for sure. The Marcin Held fight, I said right after the fight that I thought that he had it, but once I went back and watched it and paid attention to the rules, I can see why they gave it to me. And I kind of thought that I did a lot more. I was a lot more aggressive. I thought I was doing more damage. And I thought that, I 10-8 the first. I don't know how you could say that I didn't 10-8 the first round on Stevie Ray. So at a minimum, you got to put it a draw. But I don't know. It's one of those games, it's one of those things where, the sport of mixed martial arts, like, we don't have super clear criteria for who wins fights. So it's a little bit frustrating sometimes, but, and then to go a step further, I felt like, take the Jim Miller fight out of it, but for the Marcin Held fight, I felt like at one point in the first round, like, I think I could have arm locked him, and I went for it, and I tried to get it, but I really, really went for it in the Marcin Held fight. I really, really went for it, but it didn't work out. And then going into the Stevie Ray fight, there was one point where I think I could have 100% arm locked him, and I didn't because I'm like, I'm going to learn from the last fight. I'm not gonna be too aggressive. I'm going to play it a little safer, and then it just bit me the other way. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, you think that I've had all these fights and you get all this experience, but sometimes you still make bad decisions, or obviously hindsight's 20/20, but it's a little bit frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. Do you think, and your career is not over, but do you think when it's all said and done, and you obviously have your gym in Massachusetts and everything, do you think maybe you'd ever want to get involved on the, I don't know what you call it, the governmental side of things, maybe helping to, create some new judging criteria, help maybe train judges? I mean, these are all things that I think we absolutely need in the sport. I think the 10-point must system is horrible for MMA, especially in a 3-round fight, but there's so many other problems we have, and I know they've made some changes, and some commissions haven't adapted the rules, others have, but as a fighter yourself, I mean, would you be interested maybe sitting down and, because guys like Andy Foster in California are like inviting people to help him make the rules better for weight cutting and things like that. I mean, would you ever want to get involved in that side? Maybe we could come out. I know there's a better scoring system out there. There's got to be.
There's got to be a better way. The problem is that every fight is different. Wrestling and takedowns are really important for this fight, but they're not nearly as important for another fight. Or how do you come up with a criteria for if one guy wins the striking and one guy wins the grappling, but one fight is all striking and the other fight is all grappling? How do you really balance those? I think you almost need to put some kind of grading system based on where the bulk of the fight was.
Yeah.
That's the case. So if this fight was almost all on the ground, then you the grappling is way more important than the striking. It's like, it's very, very difficult. I would maybe toss some ideas into something like that. But honestly, it's just that there's no unity. There's the ABC, the Association of Boxing Commissions, and and they do MMA and they do all this stuff, and but they really don't, even the ABC has really no power. They have a whole bunch of members from all these different states, and they all try to get on the same page about stuff, but there's really nothing that, that's why we have the new unified rules. We have the old unified rules. We have different rules, different places. And, California is now, they're doing all kinds of other stuff with cutting weight and weight divisions and everything else. Like, there's really, everything's kind of on its own. So I don't think that, getting involved in any one place is really going to do anything. I think it's kind of I would toss some ideas in, but at that point, you just got to kind of take a step back and just hope that all these different commissions around the country all come to the same conclusion, which is just like very, very low chance that it's going to happen like that.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I remember one event not that long ago when Brian Stan was still commenting, and he was like, it's a joke that these commissions all have different rules, and we expect the fighters to know exactly, what the rules are based on the state they're fighting in, and they find out the day before the fight, oh yeah, by the way, you can't have one hand down on the ground that's a grounded opponent, or you can't have two, all those kind of things. I mean, we say it as journalists, we're like, oh yeah, it seems simple, but when you find out 24 hours before an event, oh, by the way, they did adapt the new rules. You can't do this. You can't. I mean, you're right. It's weird. 10 years ago, we had the unified rules, and now it's like here we are 10 years later, things are actually more confusing, which is odd.
Yeah. Yep. It's like, even locally, like Massachusetts, I never know what they're going to do. How who's the referee? Who's going to interpret the, I've heard different explanations from different people. On like the grounded opponent and everything else, it's very, very confusing. The big thing, for me is, the night of your fight, you got to talk to your referee and just see, what's going on and what their interpretation of the rules are, and kind of go there, which is not the best system and not the best way to go about it. But like Virginia, that's where my next fight is. I have no idea. I don't know if they're using old unified rules, new unified rules. We'll just have to see. We'll have to see on fight week and fight night. See what the rest does.
Yeah. Well, it's also, you talk about the scoring. I mean, it's important in a fight like you have coming up. I mean, Clay Guida, that I don't want to pigeonhole him as like a one-dimensional fighter because he's not. But, we know he likes to wrestle. He likes to grind guys. And, I that's the style of fighting. I'm a wrestling guy. I love wrestling. But I'm also a big believer in mixed martial arts. Wrestling, to me, a takedown, and this is just my opinion, is nothing more than a change of position. It's a clinch. It's a change of position. Now, that's the only thing that happens in a round, and I understand why you score it that way, but otherwise it's just a change of position. And you obviously, as a jiu-jitsu guy, you throw elbows from the bottom, you throw a lot of submissions from the bottom, and I think we got to start weighing those kind of things. I mean, I don't want to say worry, that's the wrong word, but I mean, you got to think about a thing like that when you face a guy like Clay Guida, who may come in and try to do what he did like Anthony Pettis, where he just tries to take him down and hold him there. But again, the scoring, is the judge going to score you going for submissions better than just his takedowns? I mean, it's a weird thing.
It's tough because, I as a fighter, I'm not 100% clear what's going to happen in Virginia or what rule system or whatever else. Who says that the judges have any idea about either scoring system? When I fought Jim Miller, we talked about that was like a controversial decision. One of the judges for that fight, it was the first mixed martial arts fight he had ever scored. He had never done an amateur fight. He'd never done like a local pro fight. He does, me and Jim Miller, we're both, we both have, somewhere around $60,000 on the line for a win bonus, and he scores the fight. It's tough, because you just don't know how the ref is going to interpret it. And luckily, we generally have really good refs. But with judges, you have no idea. It's luck of the draw. It's how much the judge. One, is the judge even knowledgeable? Is the judge knowledgeable at all about what's going on? Does the judge know what the criteria is? Does the judge pay attention? Is the judge texting on his phone? You know what I mean? Like it's so difficult. It's such a crappy system sometimes.
Yeah. Well, when you say that, it's also the other side of this, Joe, because you mentioned it, and that's a great point, is that when I look at your record and I say, well, you know what, you're 1-2 in your last 3, but they're all split decisions. So I don't think, you hold your head in shame. You're still right where you need to be. You get a whatever Clay Guida, you're right back on track. Yep. But what we don't see on the flip side of that is those 2 losses that could very well have been wins for you, depending on how the judging, like you said, with the fight with Stevie Ray. Now, a draw, would have been the same thing. But my point is that that's money out of your pocket. Hypothetically, you lost $120,000 or maybe $130,000 by a judge who didn't necessarily know the rules or didn't necessarily know how to score the fight. I mean, think about that. I mean, $120,000, I don't make anywhere near that in a year. And I can tell you right now, I'd be really pissed off if someone cost me $120,000.
It's even more than that, too, because so pretty much all fighters, like not everyone's the exact same way, but we're pretty close. So when I win a fight, so my pay for my show and my win money goes up by $4,000. So not only that, but it's for every fight going forward. That bogus decision is costing me between $4,000 and $8,000. You know, so and now it's like it happened 2 fights. You know, 2 fights out of 3. Now you're talking, okay, that's costing me between $8,000 and $16,000 for every fight going forward. It's like it's crazy. It's so crazy that, you know, they have judges that there's such it's so like loosey goosey who's allowed to, you know, be, you know, judge a fight and you know, be in charge of, you know, having this much of an impact on someone's life, and they couldn't give, you know, they couldn't care less to pay attention or know what's going on.
Yeah. Do you think, and this kind of takes me into another subject, do you think, because this has been another big debate, and I know we always end up talking about like the sport at large whenever we talk, I'd love to get your opinion on these things, but there's been that talk lately about, you know, maybe the UFC and mixed martial arts in general, this is Bellator, this is, you know, every other organization out there, that maybe it would be wiser to take away this whole win and loss bonus kind of thing, like, you know, the win bonus thing where it's like half your money depends on a win versus maybe making it like 80-20 where, you know, you get, you know, most of your money regardless, and then you do get a little bit of a bonus if you win because I think that takes away some of the sting if a bad judge, you know, costs you a decision, but also I think you could see some stylistic, because you hear guys absolutely admit after a fight, I played it safe because I needed the win, I needed to get paid, whatever the case may be, and I think you don't necessarily always get the best performance out of people. Do you agree with that? Or do you think maybe that, not saying it's going to fix the problem, but it might, you know, put at least a Band-Aid over the problem a little bit?
I'm kind of torn on that. You know, as a fighter myself, you know, of course I would love to, you know, so I think my contract is like, I think I'm like 62 and 62. You know, so if I win, I make 62,000. If I lose, I make 62,000. If I win, I'm like $124,000. So it's a big jump, you know. So I don't think you can just pay everyone. You know, in my case, it wouldn't be 120. It would be like, okay, you're guaranteed, you know, 100 or 110 or something, you know, something like that. But you know, so that's a little bit better for me overall, just because it's a little bit more. You have a better idea of what you're getting paid and everything like that. But as a fan, I don't think it's better. You know, I like guys being hungry. I like guys trying to get that win bonus. You know, I like guys going for it. You know, I think that I think that's part of the reason why, you know, mixed martial the sport is really exciting, whereas boxing is not so exciting. You know, you have guys that are getting paid a flat fee, and they don't. I mean, they're just going to go in there and they're going to go through the motions and not get hurt and, you know, not overextend, and, you know, and they're happy to win a decision. You know, whereas for us, it's like, no, like I want to get that submission, I want to get that TKO, I want to get that finish. You know, and we have the bonuses that kind of encourage that a little bit too. But I kind of do think it's a little bit better with the show and win money.
Yeah, it's a weird topic, because when someone first brought that up to me, my first instinct was like, it would get really expensive. You know, that would be the first thing, it would get really expensive. Yeah. But even, like I said, my thing was like, even if it's just a little bit different of a split, like you mentioned, $124,000, maybe it's 80 up front and 40 as a win bonus. You know, like even that little bit of a split, I think could even make it a little bit of a difference. You know? Yeah,
no, it's better. It's just you get to, okay, what is it? What is the best split? You know, is it an 80-40? Is it a 90-30? Is it 120? Like, it gets kind of difficult, you know. And of course, everyone could argue, you know, their own thing. And you know, maybe next time we come and negotiate a contract, maybe we'll ask for something more like that, you know. There's nothing set in stone where it has to be, you know, the show and win money has to be equal. You know, there's some guys that have negotiated stuff like that, but I don't know. So I'm going to give it some more thought for sure.
Yeah,
definitely going to give it some more thought.
Let me switch gears a little bit, Joe, because as you go into this fight, this is what, your 24th or 25th UFC fight, which is kind of crazy. You're still obviously a very young guy, early in your 30s. You've been doing this for a while. When you get on a card like this and you see it, you know, we got a card coming this weekend where, you know, Michael Bisping has talked about retiring. You got Matt Brown in his last fight. Now, he's a little older than you, but, you know, coming in his last fight now, there's people saying that, you know, Diego Sanchez should consider retirement, you know, win, lose, or draw after that fight. But you're a guy who, you know, you've stayed consistently good. You've always stayed consistently in your fights, and you've never been a guy, I've never once, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've never once heard anyone say, Joe, have you considered retirement? Because you're always a competitive guy. What is it that you feel like, I'm not trying to make you an egotistical guy, but what do you feel like has separated you, that you've been able to stay competitive and stay active and always be in fights? You've never, you know, you've lost fights. Everyone's going to lose a fight, and yes, you can get knocked out. Yes, you may get submitted, but you've always been able to come back from that. You've never been a guy that's ever gotten on that kind of streak where you get like 3 fights in a row where people are like, man, I don't want to see Joe take any more punches, man. I just don't think he has it anymore. Like, what do you feel like has been able to keep you at the, you know, at this level of the sport where, let's be honest, a lot of guys 22 fights in the UFC are not there anymore?
Yeah, you know, I think that we're I don't want to say that we're smarter, but I do think that we're a little bit smarter about stuff. Like, if I have a bad fight, like, I'm not doing anything, and like, I'm not getting hit, I'm not sparring, I'm not doing anything for like months and months. You know what I mean? I got knocked out in Japan by Anthony Pettis. I got kicked in the face right off the bat. Like, it was like a minute into the fight. And, I think I fought like 7 months later or something like that. And I probably didn't spar until probably a month before the fight. So I had like 5 months where I didn't get hit at all. Whereas, and we've always been very protective like that. Definitely, like, I've had one concussion ever in the gym. And it was before I fought. It ended up being Jeremy Stevens, but I was supposed to fight Hermes Frank at the time. And it was like a month and a half before the fight. And I got my bell rung really good. I got a concussion. And we didn't spar from then until the fight happened. So we went like a month and a half. And it was supposed to be Hermes Frank, so we thought we were fighting jiu-jitsu guy. And it changed to Jeremy Stevens like a week out. So like, maybe we could have used some better sparring rounds. But it all worked out. I won the fight and everything was good. But we're serious about, like, if I got my bell rung for anything, whether it's a fight or if it was in the gym or whatever, we're very serious about taking time off and making sure we're okay. Whereas I hear all the time about guys getting knocked out in the gym and then, taking up, getting up and just going again, or taking off a round and then going again a couple minutes later. I feel like that kind of stuff is really, really bad. And then the other thing that I think has helped us a lot is, like, I take care of injuries and stuff. Like, when something bothers me, I have like three or four physical therapists I see. I go to a chiropractor. That's awesome. I go and get massages when I need to. I've been doing all this stuff for like so long, like for years, like for 10 years now almost. I've always gone and taken care of myself and made sure we can bounce back. I think a lot of guys just kind of like, oh no, they're fine. They don't ice it. They don't take care of anything. They just go and do whatever. So I think that has definitely helped us.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's amazing that, because you've been involved. When did you have your first fight? How old were you when you took your first fight?
I think I was 22. I was 22.
22. So you've been fighting for over a decade now. So you've been at it for a while, as I said,
Yep.
with 24, 25 UFC fights, where you spent the majority of your career. And you started out young. I mean, I know by today's standards, that's not young, because you see guys fighting at, 18 right out of the gate, like your brother did. When he did it, it was like, oh my God, this is such a weird thing. Now it's, kind of commonplace, but how have you stayed? How has the fire stayed built inside you, Joe? Because, and I use this guy as an example, and I love him. He's a good guy. I don't want to single him out, but I use him as examples. A guy like Kara Parisian, who I have the utmost respect for, but he's a guy who started fighting at like 15. He's fighting Sean Shirk at like 15, and now when you look at him, I think he's only like 35, maybe. I might be making this number up, but he's not that old. But you saw what the guy went through. I mean, the guy just got burned out, and he talked about it very openly. How have you stayed to get that hunger after 10 years? Because one of the things I talked about with Matt Brown ahead of this fight, he said, when I got back in this camp, when he decided to retire, he's like, I just didn't feel it. I didn't have that hunger. I didn't have that fire burning inside where I really wanted to do it. He's like, that's when I didn't want to fight after that. And he's like, that's when I said, it's time to retire. It's time to walk away, because I don't want to be a guy just going through the motions. How do you maintain that hunger when, again, so many other guys 5, 6, 7, 8 years into a career are already burned out?
To me, fighting is not. It's kind of like a video game. It's like this addictive video game. I like leveling things up. I'm always in the gym, regardless if I have a fight coming up or not, and I'm trying to work on things. It's fun to me. It's not if I'm rolling with someone doing jiu-jitsu. It's not about me beating them. It's okay. This guy's a better wrestler. I'm gonna try to out-wrestle him. Or this guy has a really tough guard to pass. I'm gonna pass his guard. I'm gonna establish that I passed his guard, and then I'm gonna let him put me back in the guard. I'm gonna do it again. If a guy's good at footlocks, I'm gonna try and footlock him back. If he's good at guillotines, I'm going to put myself in danger of a guillotine. I'm going to work my way up. For me, it's always been about, leveling different aspects of my game up. And it's just fun for me, and there's a never ending, stream of training partners that are good at different things. You know what I mean? Like, I have my own gym, but I'm not the best at everything in my gym. I'm the best at a lot of things. I'm the most experienced in my gym, but there's tons of guys that, give me great rolls, or like they out-wrestle me, or they outstrike me, or whatever, and I try to beat them at whatever they're good at. And for me, that makes it fun. It makes it better. I know that I could do this and this to them, and I could, overwhelm them, and I could win or whatever, but it's not about that. For me, it's about just kind of, kind of setting myself up and kind of handicapping myself and trying to win with a handicap. And I think it just makes it fun. It's like a game to me all the time.
Yeah. Do you
I think
think that
keeps it fresh?
Do you think that plays a part in why you have been able to have, longevity in this sport when so many guys haven't, 20 or 24 fights into a UFC career? And that's a pretty short list, let's be honest. Most fighters, it's a rare thing to get to that point in the UFC, but that you've been able to stay, active, always competitive, always, in fun fights, is that you are still enjoying, you are still, having fun with it, because let's be honest, you and I both know, you talk backstage, there's some guys who, maybe they are going through the motions, or maybe they are just doing it for a paycheck. Do you think that plays a factor in why you've had such a long and successful career?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it definitely plays into it. I think with this fight, I think I Ty and Matt Hughes, I think we'll both have like the same number of fights. You know what I mean? And that's crazy to me, because I remember being before I even was in the UFC, just watching. He was like a dominant champ. He's doing this and doing that. And now I'm catching up. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy just kind of how it's. I've been around for so long. I never thought it would be this long. But I still enjoy it. Like, I like going to the gym. I think anyone in training camp, they have fight camp. You have days you're like, oh, you're dragging butt, you're going to the gym a little bit. But overall, day to day, I love going to the gym. I love working on things. I love getting better. And I'm having fun. I think that, I don't know. I don't know why some people burn out faster than others, but I don't feel burned out. I really don't. I really enjoy going to the gym every day.
Yeah. Now, obviously, this fight, as we mentioned, this is one of those fights, and what I love about this card, man, and this is another thing, talk about the bonus thing, this is such a weird thing to say, but there's so many great fights on this Norfolk card that I kind of feel like Fight of the Night and Performance of the Night bonuses are really going to be toss-ups, because there's so many great fights, and I don't know, you tell me, and not that it's going to affect your performance, but I kind of enjoy that competition when I look at you and Clay, I look at Diego and Matt Brown, I look at Anthony Pettis and Dustin Poirier, and there's other fights on the card as well, but it's like one of those fights where it's almost like at the end of the night you kind of feel like Dana White should be just busting out the checkbook and just writing a lot of 50Ks, because I feel like it's that kind of card.
It's definitely that kind of card, and I'm excited about that, because we've been training really hard for it. And we've known from the start that it was going to be, tough competition for any kind of bonuses. But we're ready. We're up to the challenge. I think that, on any given night, any fight, you could have a fight that, no one thought was going to be exciting, and it could be a great fight. So, we still got to do our job, but, I think it's going to be a really, really fun, exciting night.
Yeah, this is going to be a rather obvious question, and I don't necessarily know the answer, because you're a guy, you travel very well with your family and with your fan base. You always do T-shirts, and you always have your fan section. I know we're friends on Facebook, like friends, so I see when you post about tickets, and you always have people coming to support you for your fights, which is awesome. You're one of the guys in the UFC who really does have a traveling fan base, which is so cool. But, and I think you know where I'm going with this, they just announced in January the UFC is coming back to Boston for a pay-per-view. I got to imagine, you tell me, but I got to imagine Joe Lauzon in Boston kind of makes sense, right? Like, everything goes well against Clay Guida. You're going to fight in Boston, right?
Yeah, we're gonna make it an attempt. I think that, just the way, I think the UFC, they set cards a little bit further out now than they used to. I think it used to be, they didn't schedule cards, and fighters out so far. I think it's going to be a little bit tough to, one, get through this fight, unscathed and injury-free, and then, know that I'm okay to go to Boston, but we're definitely going to try. We're going to make every attempt. I'm always in shape, so I'm always ready to go. I wouldn't be surprised if a 55er, pulled out or something and we were ready to step in. But I'm excited for it, but I'm sure we'll be there anyways. We have a guy, Mike Rodriguez, in my gym, who he just won on the Dana White show, and he got a contract, so we're trying to get him on that card. So maybe I'll be cornering, maybe I'll be fighting. I'll definitely be there, one way or another. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. And then we got a whole bunch of pretty much all the other guys from New England, from Boston, all pretty much come to my gym on Saturday mornings. So we all get really good training. So guys like Rob Font, Kyle Bokniak, Devin Powell, Andre Secumta, Calvin Cater, a whole bunch of guys, all basically all the best guys around New England. I'll come to my gym on Saturday morning. So I will have so many training partners that will be on that card. I don't know. I don't think anyone's got matchups yet, but I know all those names. I know everyone's putting their name in. So we'll be there. We'll be there.
Yeah.
At some degree, we'll be in the cage.
But I will say one of my favorite moments ever covering a live fight was back in 2010 when you got the armbar over Gabe Rudiger in Boston after the whole cake thing. I remember the weigh-in and everything, but I remember the Boston crowd that night. Man, I always talk about the energy of a crowd. I remember Montreal when I saw Georges St. Pierre fight Matt Serra. I talk about, Cleveland when Stipe fought in Cleveland, and when you fought Boston, when you fought Gabe Rudiger, man, the crowd was in freaking sane that night.
It was awesome. That was such a good night. We had such a good time. We had such like a dominant fight. You know what I mean? I feel like that might have been like one of the most dominant fights in UFC history. We just whooped on him from bell to bell the entire time. A little bit of bad blood going on, in there. It wasn't a big deal, but a little bit. It was just everything matched up just right. A little bit of bad blood. Being in Boston, having crazy fans. I think I had like 600 something people there that got tickets from us. Like it was everyone was wearing my shirts. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I get you out of here, Joe, I know I'm not going to spoil anything. I know you're right in the thick of Stranger Things 2 right now, but how amazing is that show? I love that show.
Dude, it's so good. So I'm up to I think we just finished episode 4. And it's exciting. I screwed up at first because I watched the first episode of season 2, and I missed the recap. I think I just clicked, start season 2, episode 1, and I missed the recap. So I watched the first episode, and then my sister came over. And she was talking about she wanted to watch it. So, we'll watch the first episode again, and then we'll watch episode 2. And then at that point, the recap started. I'm like, I dropped the ball by not watching this recap. It was so good. Like, I forgot so much stuff to happen. But it's been great. It's been awesome. I think it's a great season so far. So
yeah.
you finished it, obviously.
I did. It's so good. I mean, I loved the first season, and you're a little bit younger than me, but you kind of grew up, in the 80s, early 90s. So I'm sure a lot of this stuff, you were literally born in the year the show's taking place. But I'm sure you enjoy, because you're a video game guy. And I remember going to the arcade as a kid. And, just so much of this speaks to my childhood too, which is one of the reasons I love it so much.
Yep, yeah, it's pretty awesome. You know who I hate is the kid that's got I don't even know what his name is. The kid with the long hair that has the car, the badass car.
Oh,
California.
Billy, yeah.
I hate that kid so much. They did such a good job with him, just making you hate him so much. He's such a jerk. I'm sure something bad's gonna come to this kid. But
you'll see. There's some stuff later. There's some stuff later in the season. They give you a little bit of a background on him, and then there's another scene that's really funny with him. And yeah, he's in the whole season. They did a really good job, because it's kind of funny because in season 1 they kind of made Steve the bad guy, the guy with the hair, and now he's kind of he became one of my favorite characters on the show, and they kind of made this Billy guy the new bad guy. So they've done a really good job of transforming one character and kind of making a new bad guy. And I love it so much. Such a great show.
Yeah, it's so good. And I think that it's amazing too that they have such great actors, and all those kids are so young. I don't think they're as young as they are on the show, but they're all young actors. They're not. It's not like they're seasoned adults that are 30 years old. They're all very, very young, and they're just doing a great job. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And then, as you and I, as fellow nerds, man, what a time to be alive with what we have coming up in the movies. And we got Justice League coming up, which you and I had our talk about Batman versus Superman. I got cautious optimism about Justice League, but then you got The Last Jedi in December. It's one of my favorite things to say. It's a great time to be a nerd, because man, you can't go more than a few weeks without a great movie or a TV show coming out. This is the prime of my life right now with all the nerdy stuff that's going on. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm not sure when you're gonna post this, but so I'm going to see Thor tomorrow night, so I'm super excited about that. So that's gonna be great. I'm getting more excited about Justice League. I think that a lack of Superman for most of the scenes I've seen, I think he's gonna come in at the very end or something. I think that's gonna keep Justice League awesome. I'm excited for that. I'm really excited for the Star Wars movie. There's so much good stuff. So my wife is super pregnant right now. She's due the first week in December. So I would normally have my Star Wars tickets already a month ago when they first got on sale, but I don't know when the baby's gonna come, so I have to wait. It's so frustrating, because I know it's gonna be the baby's gonna either come before, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go for a couple hours, I'll be back. Now I'm gonna have to wait until a day show or something. It's gonna be terrible.
Yeah, I remember we talked about Force Awakens. We were both kind of worried, but we came out and ended up being really good. I have high expectations for The Last Jedi. So that's a tough one, man. Sometimes fatherhood over Star Wars. It's a little bit of a debate, though, right? Yeah. A little bit of a debate.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It was not an easy decision. It's not an easy decision.
Yeah. Well, congrats on the baby being on the way. Obviously,
Thank you.
Safe training the rest of the way, man. Always appreciate you taking the time, and man, best of luck in the fight. I look forward to seeing you back in action as always.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, Joe. Talk to you soon, buddy.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
I remember back in the day from The Ultimate Fighter, we used to call on the podcast, we used to call Joe Creepy Baby Joe. And because he was one of those guys who never really had nicknames for like Creepy Baby Joe Lauzon, so we never got that to catch on. But Joe, I have you ever heard anyone say a bad thing about Lauzon? Like, 'cause I haven't.
Besides me? Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, he cheated at tic-tac-toe. We call it Tic-Tac-Joe. And, man, I looked over, and you know how intense he is, man. We got to playing, and I look over, and he's got a bloody nose, and I'm like, you all right, man? He's like, I'm just getting warmed up. Did you mind your business? And then by the second game, he's got his face covered in blood. I'm like, oh, man, this is Lauzon's fight mode coming out. No, man, there's nothing bad to say about Joe Lauzon. He's absolute class. And it's funny that you mentioned that about having never fought Guida, because I was up at Joe's gym, and, that he has all those posters. He's been in, a gazillion fights. And he has all his fight posters up, and I was like looking. I'm like, I think it's like, that rabbit hole Reddit thread about how they changed the Berenstein Bears spelling. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah, like that. Like we got mentally kung fu somewhere that they like reversed it. I think like I was looking at all the posters thinking that like it was gonna be like that end of The Shining where Jackson and actually in like the staff picture. I thought we were gonna see like Guida and Lauzon at the bottom of like some poster that had already happened, but they told us it didn't happen. But no, folks, it hasn't happened, and I think it'd be worth it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get out of here, of course, one of the other big fights on the card coming up this weekend in Virginia is Matt Brown in his final fight against Diego Sanchez. If anyone's listened to this podcast for the last, I've been doing it now for, going on 12, 13 years between MMA Weekly and then Bleacher Report and then obviously Fox Sports and now, doing it on my own here with the podcast. But, for a long time, about 2 years, I co-hosted my podcast with Matt Brown, of course, myself, Matt Brown, and Jeremy Loper, and for a period of time, of course, the legend, the Hall of Famer, Mark Coleman. And you sat in on some of those podcasts as well, Duane, so you're around it. And so, of course, I know Matt on a more personal level, even at this point professionally, because, I've hung out with his family, I know his kids, so I consider Matt a friend. And, it kind of bleeds that line a little bit when you do a podcast with a guy for, 2.5 years, that you get to know him a little bit better than the average fighter. But Matt is entering his final fight this weekend against Diego Sanchez. I wanted both of us, maybe, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, Duane, just kind of give a thought about Matt Brown, his final fight. I think it's only fitting that we pay tribute to a guy who has contributed so many exciting fights to this sport, has always been a unique presence in this sport, and we're going to say goodbye to his fighting career this weekend.
I'll tell you what, and this is something that I know because he's him personally, and I've had the pleasure as well. What people might not realize about Matt Brown, and if you listen to these shows, then you'll pick up some of it. But he's such an intellectual. Like Matt is a guy that is he's like an information junkie. You know what I mean? Like if he's interested in something, he wants to know the ins and outs of it, and I do believe that, remember we were talking about the back issue, and he's like, yeah, I made my own training equipment. I figured out how to do it, and I believe he's going to do something like that in the future. But, I definitely miss, here's a guy, I remember seeing you interview him in Pittsburgh, or either that or it was New Jersey. He fought on that New Jersey card. And that was in the time when it didn't look like he was going to hang around much after the Ultimate Fighter. But then something clicked, he figured something out. He got everything moving forward, and that was great for him. But then let's look at the other side of the coin too, because they need to pay homage there. I'm not saying it's not Diego's last fight, I don't think, but Diego Sanchez, what hasn't that guy done in this sport either? So it's like kind of the end of an era fight. Two guys that just I'm sure they have a ton of respect for each other, and they just want to duke it out, and they want Matt wants his last fight to be a guy that's going to come at him and scrap with him, and that's what Diego does. But, yeah, I'm going to miss Matt Brown, man. I mean, neither of us are going to get rid of him anytime soon, but the public will miss him because, he gave us good fights, great fights. He was a guy who, did he have the athleticism of a GSP or an Anderson? No, man, I don't think it's any secret. But what he had is heart and grit for days, that blue-collar work ethic. Same thing the Miller brothers are made from, and Frankie Edgar's made from. So, yeah, man, I look forward to seeing the next chapter for Mr. Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm a little, obviously, as I said, I'm a little closer to the situation than most people because, like I said, I co-hosted a podcast with Matt for 2 years, and I know him very well. And Matt has said that, once his fighting career is over, he'd like to come back and do the podcast again more often and things like that. And I agree with you. Probably the thing most people don't know about Matt, unless you listen to him on the podcast, was how smart this damn guy is. I mean, he's always reading, he's always soaking in knowledge, and he was always a constant student of the game, and that meant whether he was in the gym, out of the gym, driving to the gym, he was always doing something to get himself more ready for a fight, whether that was, listening to mental preparation tapes or training in the gym or, at home in the sauna or whatever the case may be. He was a guy who was in constant preparation, always getting his mind ready for a fight. It was amazing to watch that guy work and really amazing to hear him talk. And I said this on the podcast a couple weeks ago when I had him on before the fight, I said that I think, as good as his career has been, and it's been pretty amazing, he's put on some of the most memorable performances in UFC history, that I think he's going to have an even bigger career when he transitions into coaching, because this guy has so much knowledge to pass along to the next generation of fighters. I think that anyone that eventually becomes a student of Matt Brown, the coach, is going to hugely benefit from his wealth of knowledge on the sport. And, it's a bummer to see Matt go, but, I say this all the time, and I know this is a line I stole from somebody else. Maybe it was Matt or it was somebody else I stole this from. But I say this all the time now when I talk to guys, contemplating retirement. I say it's better to be done with the sport before the sport is done with you. And, Matt, feels like this is the time to walk away. And, I listen. He's one of the best guys in the sport. He's a guy who will give you a shirt off his back if that's what you needed from him. He's always been there whenever I've needed him. He's a great dude, great family man. And the cool thing about it is that maybe the best part about this is that Matt's not going anywhere, because I truly do believe beyond coming back and doing the podcast with us, which is awesome. I'm very excited about that. But I'm also super excited to see this next phase of what Matt Brown does. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying this from bias, and I'm not saying this from any level of personal knowing him. I just know the kind of guy Matt Brown is, inside and outside the gym. I truly believe we could be looking at the next Matt Hume, the next Greg Jackson, the next, the next great coach in our sport, because this guy has it all and he knows it all, and he knows every facet of the game. And I'm telling you, any fighters that are coming up that want to learn and become, real true fighters, man, could you ask for a better coach than Matt Brown? So as much as it's kind of like a somber moment, maybe that this is the end of his career, I don't really look at it that way. This is just one chapter closing, and he's about to open another kick-ass chapter. And I'm telling you, this guy has the knowledge to become that Greg Jackson, Matt Hume, Javier Mendez, that kind of coach, where we're going to be calling him and be like, wow, you've got 2 champions in the UFC right now. Like, that's the kind of guy I think he will be.
Oh, yeah, man. And you got to think on top of it, too. I think he can help fighters keep their headspace clear. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys in between the ears type guys. Yeah, man, coaching's going to be great for him. And also, who's to say he doesn't pop up at, Rock on the Range fronting some crazy, filling in for the lead singer of Trivium or something. You know what I mean? Just handing out just metal elbows and shit, I don't know, man. I get a kick out of him, and I know you do too. And the thing is, it's one of those guys that it's, when this is all said and done for us, David, when we move on to something else or whatever happens in the sport, you've spent a lot of time with him. I've done some great interviews with him too, but I've also spent a lot of personal time with him too. When I was out in Vegas, I saw him on the road trip. Yeah, but he's doing the Ultimate Fighter. Matt Brown's a special dude, and he's a rare breed, and he's going to be fantastic as a coach. Listen to DeMartini. He knows. Matt Brown's going to be shaping these guys. You watch.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Duane, well, I appreciate you sitting in this week. Obviously, it's always good to have you as a co-host. This isn't our first rodeo, of course, but I appreciate you sitting in this week. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, and also plug your book, because I want to make sure people go check that out. It's available right now on Amazon. I know you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that book with that road trip, so kind of tell everyone where they can find you and find the book.
You can always follow me on Twitter at Duane Finley MMA. Yeah, the name of the book is In the Cold Distance. It chronicles the road trip project I did from 2000. It started at the beginning of 2014 and ended at the New Year's Eve card with where I got my car stolen in Wickenburg, Arizona. So there's all kinds of things. I mean, the reviews that are coming in, if you look on Amazon and you're not sure if it's a book for you, there's a lot of MMA in the book, but it isn't an MMA book. It's a look behind the life of a guy chasing a dream, and the family that has to see him go all the time, and and the struggles there. And there was a lot of darkness that I was honest about. So I kind of figured this, Damon, was my love letter to this sport. We never know, man. Like you and I, we've kind of been everywhere, and you never know what's gonna happen, and where our flights of fancy take us or in our interest, because we're wacky dudes. But yeah, man, I figured if everything, Gervasi said this. Our mutual friend and mentor Tom Gervasi told me the day the book came out. He's like, hey, look, he goes, no matter how good the stuff you write every day is, people forget about it in a week. Yeah, this is something that's going to last forever. It's going to last a long time, and it's not disposable like everything else. And I was like, you know what? That kind of sat in like, yeah, man, this was, in a way, this was what made a lot of it worthwhile. So Amazon, it's available in paperback, hardcover, Kindle, whatever you want to do. Pick it up, holler at us on Twitter. And Damon, anytime you need me to step in and show Loper how to do the damn thing, I'll do the damn thing. Man, I'll tell you what, he's got some flowy hair though, man. That Loper's, and he's looking swole, man. Like you better get him out of those medium shirts.
I told him to get off that TRT. He doesn't listen to me. I try, but man, he's addicted to it now. So
dude, he's turning into a hoss, man. Like he's over here. I'm over here on Twitter, on Instagram, looking at dude just like looking like the mountain from Game of Thrones. I'm like, it's Clay Game Bowl, man. Let's do it.
I love it. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in this week. Of course, make sure you check us out on Twitter. Make sure you check us out on Facebook. I'm at Damon Martin. We have the Fight Society page over on Facebook. Want to say thank you to all of our guests, Duane Bang Ludwig, Dustin Poirier, and of course, Joe Lauzon. And we will see you guys back next week for more Fight Society podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you then.